that's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change that tune when I'm back on top in June. I said that's life.
Bam. And we're recording.
Welcome back, Harry.
Thank you. Episode 3.
Another old fashioned, I see.
Definitely an old fashioned.
So I'm confused. You have makers now, and you didn't on the last episode? Like
No.
you changed that quick, or was it makers before too?
No. It was larceny. Look up larceny. It's a good.
Okay, so you switched. You went from larceny to makers, just like
switched
that.
it up. Switched it up.
All right.
Yeah.
You got to try chocolate bitter sometime. I don't know.
Yeah, I have it on my notes list from the last episode.
Nice. No, it's good.
Oh, you know what? We're going to start out because we forgot. I actually have my episode 2 notes right here. We forgot to apologize to the great people of Orlando. Very sorry. Sorry about that.
Sorry, Orlando. I love visiting. I love coming to Disney, but that's about it.
And sorry to the guy that was driving behind Fish.
Yeah. That probably got cut out, but sorry to that guy.
Well, and if not, if you see us in person, ask me to tell the story.
That's fun. So last episode, we had talked about my background, which seemed way longer than it actually should have been because I haven't even been doing this that long. Well, at least in comparison to you.
So, are you calling me old?
No, I'm just saying my seatbelt is buckled in right now. I am ready for you to hit me with exactly how you got started. Because I don't know. I really don't know any of this. I've heard
never
stories,
heard this.
But I haven't heard like
select
the OG
stories
of like how you originally got in.
There's a few people that have. I've actually I did this in a couple of classes before, and I've had a very interesting path in audio and cars and all of that stuff. And so, I'd like to tell the story. I probably embellish it a little bit and change things up here and there, but to the best of my ability, I can kind of recount. I too was into cars kind of at an early age. I remember my sister getting a Volkswagen Fastback and it needing a radio. And I remember putting a radio in it when I was like 15. It was the first install I did.
Give me a year. Date yourself at 15.
89.
Okay.
Yeah. 89.
I was 2.
Seriously?
Yeah. I was born in 87.
I am old. Damn, I am old.
Do you ever go into like a gas station and you see like the 18-year-old or whatever it is like,
oh gosh,
the paper's ripped to like 2003 or something. And
you know
that's probably not right. This isn't a math pod, but it's like 2003.
I don't even want to know.
And I'm just like, oh my God.
I remember my dad telling me, here's the day you will realize you are old. When you get pulled over by a police officer who is younger than you.
Yeah.
You'll realize you're officially old. And then the first time it happened, I was like, oh. Yeah. The first time a cop calls you sir.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So that was kind of, my sister had gotten this Volkswagen Fastback, and that kind of sparked my interest into cars. I grabbed a Hot VWs magazine and was instantly into Volkswagens. That was kind of that side of it. The audio side of it is totally different. In those years, I would say that I was really into skateboarding as a kid. I was never like great at it. I was okay at it. Had a group of friends that skated, and that was kind of my passion and the thing I put all of my extra energy and attention into. And then when I got into high school, it kind of switched from skateboarding into bodyboarding. And that kind of started probably the end of junior high. And it was because we lived close enough to the beach that we could hop on the bus and you could bring a bodyboard on the bus, and we'd go to the beach damn near every day during the summer. And
so you've always been in California?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, minus a 3-month period of my parents moved us up to Kirkland, Washington for 3 months. My parents were like, "Yeah, I got a job offer. Great idea. Move up here," and blah blah blah. And they hated it and moved right
Yeah, it
back
sounds
down.
miserable. Sorry to people
Yeah.
listening
No,
in
no,
Kirkland.
no, for sure. Yeah. Well, add them to the list. The great people of Kirkland. Um. So we went to the beach a lot. A couple of my friends, and we would go all the time, and we would take the bus there. And one time we're out in the water, and we run into a friend of my sister's, who my sister's 2 years older than I am. And we run into a friend of hers, and I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he was basically like, "Hey, I've got my car. You want me to just drive you guys home when we're done?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be awesome. Save us the hour and a half or hour and 10-minute bus ride and get home in 15 minutes. That sounds awesome." So we get out of the water and we go and we walk up to his car, and he's got this Volkswagen Rabbit hatchback. And he opens the hatch for us to put our body boards in the back, and there's no room for the boards because he has this gigantic subwoofer box.
Oh wow.
I have no clue what it is, right? I've not even on my radar at this point, right? And somehow we cram all the boards in, and we get in the car, and he fires up the car, and he specifically puts in this, I can't remember if it was a tape or a CD back then, but puts this in, and it's tone loked after dark.
Oh wow.
And this song just goes doot 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 doot, and the car freaking shook, and I'm in the back seat, and it literally was just physically grabbing me and shaking me, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but this is awesome. And that was the instant. It was like somebody flipped a light switch. I have to have this. I want this. I'm all about this. I love it. And it was also the first demo. I mean, like literally somebody was putting on a specific song to show me something about their system. That's the first time that ever happened. And it was my first introduction to it. And that's what drove me to car audio.
That's cool.
And yeah, it really was. So then fast forward, I'm trying to think which car it was. I had a few cars.
So that was 89, right? Was that still 89?
That's somewhere in that 89,
Or is it-
90-ish range. Yeah, because if it got to 90, I would have been driving when I was 16. So yeah,
Here's a
that's
quick
probably
quiz.
89, 90.
Name the first American CD that was released.
Oh my gosh, I have no clue what that would be.
I think it was Born in the USA.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I want to say that was the first. Yeah. Yep.
Very cool. Yeah, so that kind of introduced me to it. And then when I started driving, I opened up. I was like, I need this music. I need this crazy bass music in my car. And I don't know if you guys had the recycler. I don't know if that was like everywhere, if that was just out here, but it was this classified ad paper that had a ton of cars for sale. I mean, literally you could, it was the printed version of Craigslist back.
Yeah, I was thinking
right?
of like an actual recycler. I'm like, oh, where's he going with this? And then,
yeah,
okay,
so it was like you bought it at the liquor store for $1, and they had the auto traders, which were like the picture ad ones, and then this was just classifieds. And in the back of there, at least out here in California, we have literally there's probably there's an area in Santa Ana where there used to be probably 30 stereo shops in a 3-mile radius. That's how many stereo shops there were. And they would all place ads in the recycler for like, get a 212s and an amp for $99 and get this.
I feel like it's still like that.
Well,
it's still like that.
I mean, out here, yeah, but the recycler part of it's gone, which was like it was fun to see those ads. So the first time I went to buy stereo, I opened up that recycler. I saw the ad, and it was 2 12-inch woofers with a box and an amp for $99. And I was like, I have $99 and I like woofers, right? So this was a great thing. And I went, I think my dad went with me and bought it. And brought it back and hooked it all up, and it sounded nothing like what I had experienced in that Rabbit. And it was exactly that point was a huge turning point where I was like, I need to figure out why this doesn't sound like that. And that was
Right.
kind of the start of that path. And luckily, it's kind of just crazy from a location standpoint, but I grew up in a city called Irvine. It was a great place to grow up. And there was one stereo shop in Irvine. It was called Irvine Sound and Service. And the guy who owned its name was Kevin Gribben. And I still talk to Kevin. Um, Kevin had this shop, and it was like the high end shop. And again, we're talking, this is 90, 91. I graduated in 92. So right in that kind of time period. And I just started hanging out at Kevin's shop, and he was selling Rockford and linear power. And he had this Camaro that sat in the showroom, and it had a Sony TV in the dash in 1990, right? It had Chrome Power 1000s in it. Like it was awesome. And so at the time, Kevin had gone to like RTTI, and so he really was well above what the average install person was for anything. And it was the first person that showed me that any of that type of stuff was possible, and at a very early age. So I kind of hung out there, and Kevin helped me when I had my Civic in high school, gave me a deal on some gear, helped me out, sold me some, like scratch and dent stuff, and gave me some advice. And I had built a box in woodshop class, and I built it for these two Series 1 Rockford 15s that were dirt cheap, but they were going to make big bass, and I wasn't happy with the output. So in high school, Kevin takes me into the back room and shows me this computer. I mean, computers were nothing like they were today.
Right.
And he shows me one of the early versions of Term Pro. And he's like, so here's your drop down menu. Here's your speaker. Here's where you enter the box volume. Now look at what your box looks like. Your box is, these dimensions. Showed me how to calculate airspace, and then showed me, here's what happens if we put a hole in your box, and see how this graph looks, and showed me the difference, and figured out where we were going to cut a hole, and went and got some PVC pipe and ported that box. And sure as shit, it got significantly louder and played significantly lower. And all of a sudden I was like, hey, here's science that goes with
right.
figuring out that problem between the woofer that had all the bass in the back of that Rabbit hatchback, and then my box that had no bass. That kind of sparked that whole education and that path. And I was, if it wasn't for Kevin kind of like guiding the way early on, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So
that's cool. It always comes down to like those early defining moments. You know what I mean? Like you hearing and seeing that sub in the car and just being blown away. Like, what is this?
Yeah. And back then, everything was all about the demo. Like, that's when everybody had a van or a Suburban with a wall of woofers. And it was a really fun time for car audio in the early 90s. Like it was definitely an experience.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because I feel like a majority of my clients now, they're kind of that demographic where they had something awesome in the 90s.
Yep.
And now they have a great job. They can afford a nice car. They know that they have experienced something in the past that's still far significantly better than somehow, modern cars with all that gap. And they want to achieve that. And they're seeing proof of concept of things that we're putting out on YouTube to know, okay, it still looks OEM. My car's not going to get just destroyed, and people seem to like it. You know what I mean? Like people's expectations are met. So I'm going to take a chance. And a lot of those people are the demographic who had old school gear in the 90s.
A lot of it is reminiscing and reminiscent of those days of having the 212s in the trunk and beating down the block and shaking windows. And to me, it's interesting to see some of my older clients that are in that same demographic, and they come in for systems, and they're very hesitant to say they want the bass to play really strong or play really low. And we tend to overbuild everything that we do. We tend to try to like shatter expectations. That's my goal, is to have people truly shocked at how good and how loud the systems that we do play. And a lot of times we give that demo, and I don't know about you, but I put we at some point coined it the womp knob, but we put a bass knob in everything that we do. Like, I am a huge fan of having quick control over the subwoofer level, and not, hey, let me hit 2 buttons on a processor controller or get into something on the radio. No, I want it on the fly. So every time I demo a car to a customer, I never crank it all the way. And I'm always, and that some of my customers are probably thinking back to this now if they're listening to this, but I always demo it, and I pretend like I crank it, and it's at like a third volume, and they'll be like, yeah, it's getting it type of mentality. And then I just pick the right song in the right spot, and then I goose it and just watch their reaction. And it's very much like when they were 18 years old and had one of those cars. And it's fun to have, but you don't. It's like having a really fast car. You know, you don't have to put the pedal all the way down, but it's fun every once in a while. You're on an on ramp to accelerate quickly.
Now, let me quickly ask you this. So let's just say modern car, you're doing a DSP, subwoofer volume. Realistically, where that is being set, and again, every song is recorded differently, so every song is going to be very different in how the bass is going to be represented. Are you telling clients you're basically playing it at the moment where you're hearing some sort of resonance in the car? Because no matter what, you're always going to get to the point of where you're going to hear some sort of resonance, whether it's in the enclosure, whether it's in a panel. Are you demoing that to pass the point of resonance just to show 100%. Them how loud it can play?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Like there's when it comes to an audio system, there's a few ways to listen, right? Like, and we do a lot of systems where you can shut your eyes in the install bay and really get your brain and your whole experience tuned into this soundstage and an image, and enjoy like the noise floor that isn't there.
Right.
And all of that, right? That's kind of one way to listen to music. The other way is, you know, with your eyes open, paying attention to driving in a somewhat quiet environment, and enjoying that the tonality of the system is good, and the volume is there, and that even with your eyes open and looking at the road and seeing what's going on, you still can tell that there's a sound stage. It's not going to be as focused as if you were concentrated and your eyes were shut, but it's it's there, and you can sense that. And then the third version is windows are down and you're going 75 on the freeway and you're jamming. And to me, the ultimate system does all of those things well.
Right.
To me, that's always the goal. And the limitation is just the budget. That's it.
Yeah, I was just trying to,
or the car.
I was trying more or less to figure out how you are demoing that bass, or the subwoofer, because I think that's somewhere that I always stop at the point of resonance. Like I could say I've never really shown a client like, okay, if you want it to get loud, this is how loud this thing will actually play. I always demo it to the point of resonance on each individual song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So they can key in and lock in on that sound stage where the sub sounding like it's coming from the front versus it hits resonance and then you're locating it to the back.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's usually, it depends on how the bass knob is set up and whether it is a complete cut to zero or not on what we can do. But like, my favorite systems are when we can get it dialed that the knob is all the way down and the car is musically correct, and that the bass is anchored in the front of the car. And as soon as you start to cheat that knob, you're past that. Right. I like having this point of return, right? So when we do systems, this is the equation I always give to my customers. You're coming to me with an order for your steak, right? You say, I like my steak medium rare. And it's my job to build you this system or cook this steak until I feel that it's medium rare, right? You're going to get in there, you're going to listen to the system, and you might be like, I mean, it's cooked to the right temperature, but I like a little more salt, or I like a little more pepper.
Yep.
Or I need a little steak sauce. So I always tell my customers, right? I tune it with all the controls at 0. Feel free to use the bass and treble controls, right? Like, you have that control in your radio. That's your salt and pepper, right? And feel free to adjust that as you feel it needs to taste.
Mhm.
And what we've done is accurate and to our house curve. And if you ever put too much salt or too much pepper, or
You
you
always put it
ever
back to
take
0.
off, you just put it right back to 0 and start fresh. It's like
Mhm.
you got a fresh piece of meat. And then we joke that the subwoofer level control is the steak sauce, and you only use it when you really need it.
Yeah. So I always kind of feel like subliminally it's almost kind of dangerous because you have a lot of people who always think that they can figure out little improvements on their own. And you can see it a lot when like you do say just like a Pioneer radio or a Kenwood radio, and say everything was set to 0 and then they come back and the loudness is on, the
Oh
sound
gosh,
stage is
yeah.
on high. You know what I mean? Like everything is just effed with.
Yeah, no,
And
and
then they come in and you sit them down and you're in the car and you're like, why is all this stuff changed? Do you think it sounds better? And then they're like, yeah, it definitely sounds better. And then you put everything back at 0 and then you're like, oh my God, it sounds like amazing now. Like you got so far away because you got distracted with the idea of you improving it. The problem is I feel like a lot of people can perceive improvement based on hearing distortion, right? And I feel like that's what the OEM does well in a lot of factory systems is they have bigger woofers. They essentially a lot of times just have more audible distortion, which is being perceived as louder music almost, right?
right.
And you
Distortion.
even have some clients to the idea in which when you're playing music for them and you don't have any clipping, you can play like say you have the Moscone set to where like tops out at 35 on the big DRC. Say it's at like 33 and it's loud as hell. In theory, if there's no clipping, you're not hearing that distortion. So you don't have the idea to want to turn it down from the natural reaction of the ears.
Right.
So you just want to keep going and keep going and keep going. And some people are used to hearing that like that first part of distortion and then turning it down.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot with our customers, in that the cue that your brain looks for loudness is that onset of distortion. That's what your brain's
right.
It's how your brain goes, hey, this is loud. And when you don't have that, your ears are basically, your brain's attenuating your sensitivity to it, and you'll get used to it really fast if you don't have that clipping. And that's, to me, that's one of the best reasons to justify putting Class A B amps in a car, is because when they do clip, they do it elegantly. You know, a lot of Class D amps, they have more power, so you don't drive them to clipping as often. But when you do, they lose their shit. Like they go nuts. And so that's one of the huge benefits to Class A B. There's a lot of downsides, but yeah.
Right. I didn't mean to derail you. I was just very curious about the explanation of how you demo the sub, because I think there's a lot of good to that as well. Because again, some clients might never speak up and say, hey, how loud does this thing actually get safely? So, I mean, that's important as well. So just trying to learn some stuff.
We have a car. It's one of my customers who is a doctor, and he brought me a car, and same thing, grew up in my era. We have an awful lot in common, except for that he's a doctor. And he likes really clean music. He had really nice systems his whole way through. And the way he explained it to me, this it's one of my favorite analogies from a customer, was that he wanted all the detail. He wanted a great soundstage. He wanted it to sound like what he remembers his car sounding like. And, you know, first to admit, like, hey, I like the bright sound of the MB quartz. And, you know, that's, I remember those systems well. And I like all that. And he goes, as a doctor, I eat pretty healthy, but occasionally I still sneak through the McDonald's drive-through for a Big Mac, even though I know it's not good for me. It's not healthy. He goes, I need that Big Mac in the trunk.
Yeah.
When I want it there, I want it there. Yeah. You know, I'm not going to use it all the time, but I want to have the ability to do something. The funny part is we've had that car for a while. He's actually been tied up with COVID stuff and locked at a hospital that he can't get out of, basically. And I still have his car months later, and he's never even heard it. So one of these days he'll get to hear it. Maybe I can video that reaction or something.
Yeah, shout out to him.
Yeah. Yeah. He's definitely holding it down.
All right. So it's like 2000 or not 2000,
Oh, so
1991,
I'm in high
92.
school. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 91-ish, 92. I'm graduating. I got my Civic with it's kind of crazy. I was nowhere near as fast as your Turbo Eclipse, but I had my Honda Civic that had some headers and a carb and a little bit of work done, and it had this gigantic wall in the back with 215s ported, and we would pull it out to go racing and then throw it back in so that we could beat down the block all week. And had a lot of fun, learned a lot with that car, and learned a lot from Kevin and the guys at Irvine Sound. And basically I got close to graduating high school, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wasn't into being a student. I didn't necessarily see myself as wanting or not wanting to go to college. I just knew that unless I knew where I wanted to end up, I didn't want to just go to college to go to college. And if I had a goal in mind, or as soon as I knew what that was, I'll figure it out and I'll go. So I went to Kevin at Irvine Sound and Service and I said, "Hey, I'm about to graduate. Can I have a job?" And he basically said, "Absolutely not." He just wasn't big enough to take on somebody else. And at the time, and basically what he told me is, he goes, "Look, you've helped out. I'll write you a hell of a recommendation letter, but why don't you go to some place like Circuit City and learn to take cars apart with their insurance policy?"
Is this when you started with the road shop?
Yeah. So literally, like my parents, when we moved back from the beautiful town of Kirkland, Washington, right? They bought a house in Irvine.
A shout out to Kirkland folks.
Shout out to my homies in Kirkland from those 3 months I lived there when I was 3.5.
Good people in Kirkland.
Yeah, good people in Kirkland. And so my parents had told me, like, my sister and I both, like, we will keep you in the same school district the entire time you're in school, but we'll probably leave this area when you graduate. And I have a pretty cool group of friends that literally we started at our elementary school the day it opened, like a brand new school. And we were the first group to go all the way through and graduate from the elementary school, and then went to junior high together, and then went to high school together. And so there's this kind of core group of friends that every once in a while, every 5 or 10 years, we all get together, and yeah, it's a good time, good people. And so literally one day in high school, I come home and there's a for sale sign on the front yard, and I'm like, oh, they were not bullshitting. Like, they were serious. And so I was forced to, they were like, "Hey, there's a room for you in the new house if you really want it." And it's like, I just graduated high school. I don't want to move 45 minutes inland and away from the beach and away from my friends. And that time when you're graduating high school, like, your friends are everything. And so I moved out with a couple friends, and Kevin wrote me that referral letter, and I went on over to Circuit City in Huntington Beach and got myself a job. Definitely the right move. It was definitely a good experience. Their training program was good. They sit you down in your first day, like, it's like, "Oh, well, you need to study all this stuff." I don't know if you remember, like, studying and then having to take their tests.
Yep.
And it was one of those things to where, like, I was into it. I just sat there, I read everything, and took the test the first day, and I was working on a car that afternoon. And that's supposed to be a couple-day process. And I'm just like, let me at it. Let's do this. I was so excited to, like, I'm actually going to do this. And I've always been super passionate about cars and about audio. And that was kind of how it started.
That's cool. So how long after Circuit City until you meet Stevie Nicks? Because I want to get to that part of the story.
There's a lot of important stuff. So there's a lot of stuff. So as we go through kind of my story, I've had a lot of friends and coworkers through this path we're going to take talking about all of this. And I don't know what the common thing was between all of us, but everybody, not everybody, there are a good number of people that I cross paths with that I believe we are collectively together. Everybody gets to share in my success, and I like to share in theirs a little. And it's because they're people that I collaborated with, people that I knew, and maybe they carry a little me with them. Maybe I carry a little of them with me. But one of the first notable people, notable now, not necessarily notable then, was when I worked at the road shop in Laguna Hills at Circuit City. I worked with a guy named Mike, and then all of a sudden there was a new guy. And there's a little bit of a hazing process to the new installer at Circuit City every time somebody
Of
comes.
course, the F and
And
G.
so the F and G's name is also Mike. So now we have two Mikes. And so I dubbed this Mike the Rookie, right? Like it was Jerky Boys times. It's a little bit before your days, but the old prank phone call shows, and there was a character on there that was called Mike the Rookie. So we referred to this other Mike as Mike the Rookie.
I already know where this is going. Go ahead.
So Mike the Rookie turns out to take a path from that. We spent some time together playing mini trucks back then. I had a Toyota truck. He had a Toyota truck. And he went on to, do some stuff, become the editor of Mini Truckin' Magazine and Hot Boat Magazine. And now he's on a little show called Roadkill in Finnegan's Garage. And that's Mike Finnegan. Started out back in the day at the Circuit City Road Shop. And
that's
now
cool.
Definitely a fun one. But that was kind of the first person on my path that I will say became successful. And by no means did I have anything to do with him becoming successful, but I share in it anyways because I like Mike. He's a good dude. So I'm working at Circuit City, and another guy that worked with me at Circuit City, his name's Scott Fletcher. He left and went to work for an Allen Ed's, and I don't know how familiar you are with Allen Ed's. They're a chain out here. Yeah, they've changed hands. It's kind of mixed up a little bit, but this store in Laguna Hills was an Allen Ed's, and Buddy Scott had gone over to work there, and they did a little bit higher end stuff, had cooler product than what we were using at Circuit City. And I was like, okay, they needed somebody. And I was like, okay, I'll come over there. And that was as I was starting to get kind of more into the custom stuff. I was into the custom truck scene. Kind of around that time, I met a guy named Pat Nickel, who owned a place called Ballistic Motorsports. And he had a really famous mini truck that was on the cover of Mini Truckin'. And I want to say it was probably the first body dropped mini truck on the cover of Mini Truckin'. And he had a shop right up the street. And he was also, maybe at some point we can have him on. He's a really cool dude, but he also worked at a stereo shop. And he his dad had built custom cars and kind of turned him onto that stuff. An amazing fabricator. He builds fire engines now. Crazy, like crazy billet parts for fire engines and stuff. But
think about all the other avenues that are affiliated with what we do that other people do. Like you just said, building fire engines.
Yeah, like insane. Actual important stuff, not like what we do. So Pat was working. I can't remember the name of the stereo shop, but Pat worked at this high-end stereo shop building like kind of crazy stuff. And now I just sparked memories of other stuff from Irvine Sound. I should have told you, but we'll get there someday. So Pat had opened this suspension shop and was, I think, doing stereo stuff during the day and the suspension stuff at night. And I think he was a big inspiration in Mike's kind of career and got, as we were kind of into that mini trucking thing. So I left, went to work for this Allen Ed's, which somehow they lost their franchise and became Jay and Howard's, and worked there
That's a long way from Allen Ed's.
It really is, but it was the two guys. There were two shops that were both Allen Ed's. They both lost their franchise. I can't remember. I want to say that one of them was married to the other one's sister or something. I don't know, some weird connection there. But worked there for a few years, learned a little bit more, kept trying to like push and experiment, and was working on friends' cars and just trying to build bigger and bigger, crazier stuff. And then there was a shop that opened up in town, and they were, a little bit further away. They're actually in Irvine at the time that I was in Lake Forest. And these were like, it was kind of the onset of the high end stack 'em high, watch 'em fly guy. So like that recycler ad that we were talking about, like most of the stuff that was in that when I was, 89, 90 was all the garbage brands. It was Pyramid and like, I think that first amp I bought was a Turbo 150 plus 150, right? Like just no name stuff. And
sounds like it'll perform well.
Right. So this shop called Gold Star Audio was kind of the original one that took that mentality, but did it with high-end product. They were whoring out PPI and Rockford and like everything they could get their hands on. And they had a nice facility and they were advertising. They had lots of customers. And I was working at this other shop, and occasionally we'd go pick up equipment from them. We were out of stock of something. They had, if we had one of something, usually they would have 10 usually. Like it was seriously stacked floor to ceiling. And so every time I'd go in there, they would be like, you want to come work here? You want to come work here? And then one day it just kind of was like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you
like,
work here now.
Yeah. And so I
Just
went
stay.
to work there. So I'm going to take a sip real quick. Sorry.
You won't put the shirt on right now and
Right,
sign this
right.
paper.
You don't have to go back. You don't have to
Yeah.
go back. So owner's name, Mike Mayer, and his son Steve Mayer, and good people and totally instrumental in kind of, giving me an avenue and an outlet for wanting to, build custom stuff. And so I started there, and I can't remember which one of us started first, but within like a week of each other starting, I worked with another guy named Mike. And this Mike had kind of grown up on the other side of town and learned from a whole different group of people how to do everything from wiring and fabrication. And I had learned from some other people on the way and staring at magazines, and they put us together, and we basically did fab work. And we had guys that would run wires and install speakers and do the basic stuff. And we spent most of our days, building panels and paneling out trunks and upholstering stuff, and, kind of building these, nothing like what we do today. But for back then, there's a lot of carpet and occasional vinyl trunk, but, the higher end side of things. So that Mike is Mike Vu. And
I knew you were going to get there at some point.
Yeah, I'm just going to assume that you guys know who that is. But Mike went on to work for Alan Ed's, actually building show cars in house. And then when Chris Yotto left Alpine, he took over Chris Yotto's job there. When he left Alpine, he opened a place called MV Designs, who did a lot of stuff with Scion. And then when he ended up closing that up and going to work for a new electric car company called Faraday Future, which I think they're struggling now. And then he left Faraday, and now he works at the electric truck company Riven. And they're getting ready to launch their truck, and that's where he is now, living in Detroit. So
that's a cool company.
Yeah, in a really cool truck.
They make some cool stuff.
Yeah. So Mike and I started working together, and it was really weird that, like, in this, I would say probably like a 4-week time frame, we built, we were paneling out a trunk every day or two and doing these systems. And we just really quickly said, like, okay, everything we do different. Your way's better to do this. My way's better to do that. Your way's better to do this. Mine's better than that. In a super short period of time, I feel like we both just got night and day better.
You both adapted to each other.
Yeah. And we took everything that we knew and we put it together. And then, we grew just like crazy during that time period. And, I want to say I worked there for a couple of years. And then one of the guys that I worked with, his name is Jamie Rawlings, who was an ex acoustic employee. And I think he had worked at Macintosh when they did the car audio stuff. And he had worked at Gold Star for kind of a short period of time, but he went up and ran a shop in Beverly Hills that was like super famous back in the day. It's called Paris Audio. It was started by a guy named Bill Yaley. And that kind of back in the day, the SoCal shops were Paris Audio for the kind of LA crowd, and the Orange County crowd was Speakerworks. And those were kind of the two big shops. And Bill had sold the shop to a guy that owned some other shops out here in California. And Jamie went to work there and needed an installer. And he called me, and I'm like, I don't want to drive an hour plus each way to go to Beverly Hills. I'm like, I'd need this ridiculous amount of money. And he's like, give me a couple minutes. And he calls me back. He's like, okay, come on up. And I was like, oh, I guess I have a new job. And so I went to work at the shop in Beverly Hills, and it was really weird for me because it was the first time where I like consistently was working on higher end cars. I had done, Ferraris and Porsches and a few here and there type of thing up until that point. But I get to the shop in Beverly Hills, and it's like the cheapest car we work on is like a 5-year-old Porsche, is like the bottom of the barrel. And it's like, oh, so you kind of get thrown into that fire, and you just figure it out and go. And it was kind of an interesting time. That was right as the 996 and the Boxster were coming out, and the sound systems in there were just absolutely terrible. And the base model cars didn't have amplifiers, and like, I mean, it was really bad. So we kind of put this package system together, and we were doing a ton of that stuff. And they had a hell of a client list. So they actually moved locations, and there's a lot of stories up there. I would have to say that my favorite story, it's kind of a two-part story, but I worked with a guy up there who very private. His name is Dan. We'll just call him Dan. That's enough.
Private Dan.
Yeah, Private Dan.
Lieutenant
Dan.
Yeah.
That's going right there with you.
There you go.
So Dan had worked at another shop up in the LA area, and he comes in to interview. And I remember looking at his car, and like, he can barely fit his legs into his car because he has these. It almost looks like he just.
Lieutenant Dan doesn't have legs.
Right? See, well, this Dan did. So he can barely get his legs in the car. There's this huge set of just like raw ass wood enclosures in the front of the car. Like, it looks like somebody like took unfinished home speakers and just put them in the front of the car. And I'm like,
piqued my curiosity.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, this dude's not gonna fly around here. Like this is Beverly Hills. These are like fancy ass cars. Like, yeah, this little Nissan. And I'm like, yeah, this is not a good fit, right? Well, it turns out that Dan and I became good friends, and I have the utmost respect for Dan. And after the podcast, I'll explain a little more about Dan to you. But,
cheers to Dan.
Yeah, cheers to Dan. Cheers to Dan, who's in Florida right now.
Hopefully he's not in Orlando.
Yeah. We get to do some fun stuff up there. I get to meet all sorts of celebrities.
Name one real quick. You said all sorts. Name one. Hurry.
The visual Pamela Anderson. So
okay.
Like, and the reason that comes to mind is because she used to come and park her car right in the alley behind, and right where Dan's car was the first time I saw it. So
me saying that just instantly made this more interesting.
Yeah,
did she have the barbed wire on her arm yet? No.
I don't even remember. I just remember she did.
Is this Baywatch Pamela Anderson or beforehand?
She definitely looks different when she's not all dolled up.
Okay.
So
I hope she's
apologies to Pam Anderson and the great residents of Kirkland.
Yeah.
So we had moved shops actually right into the heart of Beverly Hills, like deeper into the center. And the guy that runs the shop, Jamie, tells me that he has this famous music producer coming in, and he wants to do a system. And apparently Bill had done systems for him multiple times in the past. And he's got this Bentley that he wants to do this system in. And I'm like, okay. So the guy walks in, don't recognize him, have no idea. He deals with Jamie, gets the system all laid out, and he leaves. We have the car, we're doing the install. And then like, that was kind of like the early days of search engines and all that kind of stuff, and internet. We're talking, this is like 90, it's got to be 7-8-ish.
Okay.
And so I look him up and I realize who it is. And it's Rick Rubin, who was the guy that started Def Jam Records with Russell Simmons. He found the Beastie Boys and Run DMC and LL Cool J, and like half of the people that I grew up listening to, like a really famous. Yeah, it's just absolutely insane, right? And it's like, we're getting to do Macintosh amps and a Macintosh head unit, and Rick had done his research and was like, this is what I wanted. We actually did a Focal 3-way in the front of the car, the whole nine. It was like, I have some pictures of it. Maybe we'll use that we'll use the trunk. Okay. I have a really bad picture of the trunk of Rick's Bentley with the Macintosh amps in it. So we do Rick's car, and I listen to it, and Danny's trying to tune it. I want to say, I can't remember what we had for EQ in there. I want to say that we might have had some Zapco EQs in there. I'm listening to it, and at that point in time, it is the best sounding car I have ever built. Right? Like, I'm just blown away. Like, this is awesome. He's going to be so impressed, and blah, blah, blah. And Rick comes in, and the whole reason he wanted that car done, and he gets systems in those cars, was to have as a reference. From what we had learned from his assistant and stuff, they're very big on playing music on all sorts of playback devices to make sure that it sounds good on a crappy ghetto blaster or on a car radio or that kind of stuff. And
I will say, the really cool thing about a reference system in a car is I feel like more times than not, that's where you're listening to music.
Right. It's where you have some time. I feel like life is so busy that like even on you have a stupid 3-minute commute to work and I'm jealous,
Yeah.
but I've got a 10 to 20-minute drive and it's the only time I can listen to music
But
really. It's
how
like,
often are you sitting at home? I mean, again, everyone's different. I'm sure like if a lot of people had prioritized home audio systems, they would use it more often, but how often are you listening to music anywhere but the car?
right. Like I have what I would call a very nice home system. It's not crazy expensive or anything, but I have a very nice set of towers and I have a good quality receiver with good power and it's a very enjoyable system to listen to. And
Mhm.
I turn it on 4 to 6 times a year.
Right. That's my point.
Yep, exactly. And
I
we'll
feel
take it.
like if you're a producer, you should spend time listening in a really good car. I'll leave it
Right.
at that.
Well, and I will tell you this we're getting to the what I would say one of the biggest changing moments in my audio career is coming up here in a second when we get to it. And my world changed because of it. So Rick comes and gets in the car and he puts a CD in and he listens for a couple of like maybe 15-20 seconds of something that they just recorded in the studio, goes to the next track, and he looks at me and he says, I don't know what it is, but it's wrong.
Ooh.
And I'm just like, I just felt like, you asked a girl to dance and she
Yeah.
said, no,
Especially because you were so
no.
jazzed before
Yeah,
before
I
you
was,
sat in it.
oh my gosh.
You're like, "This
So,
is sick."
yeah. So I turn to Lieutenant Dan, right? Like Dan, we're all sitting there and it's like, what's wrong? And it was the first time that
You were humbled?
we well, no, I mean I again, I had never been asked to execute on that level before, right? Like that was I hadn't done a ton of like sound quality stuff. I knew Dan knew his stuff and we would build good sounding systems, but
Mhm.
who knows that they were like super accurate. We didn't have an RTA. We didn't it's not like things are today, right?
Right, right.
And so we're trying to figure out what's going on with the car. And it basically, looking back now, it's like the most obvious. I would never do what we did in that car. Right. And that's that
Right.
we had a 3-way with no delays. And it's a phase issue. When you have a guy that sits in a recording studio,
Of course,
listening
yeah.
near field
Mhm. Yep.
to a nice set of studio monitors where he sits dead center and you put him off center in a car and you have
Right.
sound coming from
It's
6
not right. Yep.
locations,
Yep.
it's never going to do what his studio does.
Right.
And so he ends up bringing another car that he had done, that Bill had done 5 years previously. And he's like, I want you to hear this to know that this is acceptable. This isn't amazing. I was trying to do amazing. Remember, Rick had picked the equipment out. It wasn't
Right.
us.
Right.
He had done his research and that's what he wanted. And the components on their own are good components. It's just the install locations and the
Of course.
tunability of it at the
Yeah, the
time
environment of the car.
was not conducive to what it wanted to do. And so I look at this car and it's literally a pair of 6.5 coaxes in the doors in the bottom of this Bentley. And that's in an amp and that's it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then he's like, yeah, he's like, so he gives us the studio monitors that he listens to. They're these Genelec monitors and we listen to them and we're like, yeah, that does sound night and day better than what your car sounds like, right? At some point in life, I want to reach out to Rick and be like, can I do a system for you now and
Yeah.
redeem myself, right? So that leads us to
Okay.
where at that point, my interest is totally peaked in higher level sound. And I'm not talking building good sounding cars. I'm talking building cars
For
that
record producers.
yeah. So the next phone call we get is from Stevie Nicks from
Okay.
Fleetwood Mac, right?
Yep.
This is the story
It's
you
a
wanted
good
to hear,
story. Yeah.
right? So Dan and I had lots of talks about Rick's car, and Dan had been kind of pursuing this, like what he had been doing in his kick panels in that car that he drove every day was high-end home speakers
Hmm.
on axis in the car. And the theory behind it is it's pretty straightforward. Most speakers, if you take a frequency response, play relatively flat. right? If you
Mhm.
take the environment out of the picture and you point it at a microphone, most speakers play relatively flat in the bandwidth you need them to play.
Correct.
And the other issue in a car is that you sit to one side. So the further you can get the speakers away from you, more equalize the path length, the better the soundstage is going to be. And then the other side of it is that most, I say most good car speakers, let's say, I like to kind of say that the $800-ish price point on car speakers and down is the turning point.
I completely agree.
Anything from $800 and down is at a retail price point, is a speaker set that somebody's designing to sound as good as they can for the price point
Correct.
within the constraints that they have. And those constraints
Mhm.
are usually that they need the tweeter to fit in as many locations as possible,
Right.
and they need the woofer to play in any enclosure volume, as opposed to a home speaker that's designed to play in either a ported or a sealed enclosure and rely on this. And again, this is all stuff that I was learning back then,
Right. Right.
and Dan imparted this wisdom to me. It's not like I came up with this all on my own, but you take these car woofers and they're stiff because they have to warranty them and they don't know what enclosure you're going to put them in. It's not
Mhm.
like you would take an 8-inch woofer and put it in a 6 cubic foot enclosure. Yet that's the math that you're doing in some of these scenarios. So they have to build these super stiff suspensions, and then the speaker doesn't react as quickly as it would if it had a looser suspension. And so those are all the factors. And so if we can put it in an enclosure, move it as far away, put it on axis. Wait a second, we're in a recording studio. That's the
Mhm.
goal, right?
Right.
I get this kind of mindset that, like, as much as I thought Dan was crazy the day he rolled up with that car, I realize how genius he is at the same time, right? And I'm like, okay, so I've been practicing fabrication for whatever it is now at this point, 7-8 years. We just need to find a person to let us try to mix what he and I do together,
Mhm.
right? And so the next phone call is Stevie Nicks, and she says, hey, I don't drive that much, but I'm getting a new car and I'll probably be in the passenger seat most of the time. It's a new Lincoln Navigator. It's just coming out. And I really want to do a nice stereo system. And she was actually referred from one of our other clients that knew her. And she's like, so I was thinking, like, we just put nice speakers in it and maybe change the radio and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I would go one of two routes. I'm like, I would either add a subwoofer and upgrade the speakers in the front and the radio and just kind of call it a day. Or if you really want to get into it, what I would suggest is, let me cut the floor out of the front of your brand new truck you've never seen and sink a set of recording studio monitors into it. And she's like, oh, well, how much do you think that would cost? And I kind of gave her a ballpark. I want to say that it was like, we either need $5,000 or we need $20,000, but I wouldn't go. And she's like, well, what about in between? I'm like, there is no in between. You either just got to go for it or you do this. And she's like, well, let me think about it. And like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just had a phone conversation with Stevie Nicks. And two, oh my gosh, I hope she goes for it. I hope she goes for it. I hope she goes for it. And it turns out she went for it. And so Dan and I start planning, and I'm like, well, what speakers do you want to use? And he's like, well, I found this company called North Creek Music Systems, right? I don't even think they're in business anymore, but North Creek back in the day used
Shout out to North Creek,
well,
pretty good company.
I think
if
they
they're not in
retired.
business
So
anymore.
North Creek was one of those guys that they would take like the B&O towers and build higher end
Mhm.
crossovers for them to improve the sound, right? So
Okay.
they had a kit to do a ScanSpeak 7 with a ScanSpeak tweeter. So this is back in, I want to say whenever the Navigator came out. So I think it's probably 97 or 98. And like, I had never heard of ScanSpeak before. And so their big thing was that they ordered a lot of drivers from Scan, and then they would hand match them in pairs, right? And then they had crossover networks. So
Mhm.
somewhere I have pictures of these. They would give you pegboard to, like, these are home audio guys that they don't care too much about what it looks like on the inside of a home audio enclosure, but it's pegboard, and you have to hand solder these capacitors that are the size of my drink glass, right? Like, they're just, the crossover components cost more than the drivers. That's how expensive it was. And we basically cut the floorboards out of this Navigator and made trays and skid plates and did Zapco amps. The rear fill was like a set of MB Court with the tweeter that hung over on axis in the back seat. And then the sevens and tweeter in the floor. And yeah, so the best part of the story, right, is that she's coming up. We haven't met her in person yet. The car came on a flatbed. She's coming to pick it up and do the final tuning with us. And we've got to, so,
I have so many questions
in our mind, in your brain, it's 70s Stevie Nicks coming in, and then she comes hobbling in with a cane, and but she's got like the mystical witchy dress on, and like you're like, okay, the vibe's there, whatever. And it was such a big deal. I brought my wife up with me, and like everybody in the shop is there. Like it's a big deal, right? And I'm trying to remember who all was in the car. I think it was her, me, Danny, and probably Saul was probably in the car. And so we're listening to it, and she's like, she goes, it sounds really good, but I don't know if it has enough bass. Okay?
What's the first song she wants to hear?
I don't remember.
How do you not remember that? It was Little Lies, wasn't it?
I can't remember what we were playing, but her comment was that she wasn't sure if it had enough bass, and she thought we might want to boost the bass. And I'm like, I think that it's the tracks we're listening to. Why don't we pick something that has a little more bass? So she goes through my CD case. Yeah, she wanted the Sony bass boost button off her Walkman. No. So she goes through my CD case.
Okay.
And grabs the CD.
Oh, what'd she grab?
And puts it in.
What was it?
LL Cool J, doing it and doing it and doing it well. And I am about shitting myself that I am sitting in a car with Stevie Nicks listening to LL Cool J, right? And the first bass note hits and she goes, oh, it's got plenty of bass.
That is awesome.
And I am totally redeemed for the Rick Rubin experience, right? Like everything we wanted to accomplish, we accomplished. The car sounded amazing. Like it did everything well. And it was the proof of that concept that doing real speakers in the right location, in the right enclosure is everything, and not scattering speakers in a bunch of locations across the car and trying to correct for it. Yeah. So good.
I bet
I got lots of stories.
I bet there was some point when everyone was listening to you building up to that part of the story, everyone's like rummaging through their head, trying to think of what she put on.
Spanish Harlem.
Everyone was off.
Yeah, there was no way you could have guessed that.
And if you got it, shout out to you.
Oh gosh. Can I throw somebody else under the bus while we're doing this? Oh my gosh. I hope it doesn't get back to him. Not that it would, but so a lot of I'm going to get in trouble for telling celebrity stories. So one of our celebrity clients was Meatloaf.
Meatloaf. He's a dick. Isn't he? He's got to be a dick. Oh my God. He's such a dick.
Look. So he drops the car off because remember the Sony? Are you too old to remember CD changers? I don't even know.
Or too young to remember CD changers.
Do you remember Sony 10-disc CD changers? Yes. And they'd always jam because people put 11 discs in them. So Meatloaf brings his Mercedes in because the CD changer's jammed, and I get it unjammed, right? And I pull the first CD out that's jammed, and guess what it is? No,
Stevie Nicks.
No,
or LL Cool J.
No,
LL Cool J.
It's a fucking Meatloaf CD. Then I pull out the next CD just to check. Guess what that is? And the next CD.
Meatloaf. It's all Meatloaf.
It's all CDs. So then the best part about this, my wife and I still joke about this all the time. So I have a phone number to call to let him know that his CD changer is fixed. And a lady answers the phone. I have no idea, girlfriend, wife, daughter, what his situation is or was. But I'm like, and I don't know how you refer to Mr. Meatloaf, right? So I'm like, hi, this is Gary from Paris Audio. I just wanted to let you guys know the Mercedes was all ready. And you can hear the phone kind of go away. And all I hear is, I'm going to get away from the microphone while I do this. Meat! Phone's for you! So I guess you refer to him as Meat. Mr. Meat.
Mr. Meat.
Mr.
Or Mr. Loaf. Oh, he just doesn't seem like a nice person.
I never met the man. Had a brief conversation with
him. I remember I saw a season of Celebrity Apprentice when he was on there with Donald Trump. And he just, I don't know. It seemed like he had all sorts of issues.
Yeah, I kind of remember that now. So I have a couple of good stories. We may have to stop this podcast at just getting to this point and continue it another.
You've done so much that you deserve 2 episodes.
Yay! Thank you.
Because we haven't. We're not even in Alpine yet.
Oh, we're not. Yeah, we haven't even. We're a couple jobs away from Alpine. In the first year or so that I worked at Paris, this actually predates the Rick Rubin and the Stevie Nicks story. Gary Busey comes in.
Oh my God! You're one after another. And is this before motorcycle accident, Gary Busey?
No. This is post. This is bad. This is batshit crazy. Most awesome dude in the world story.
This isn't Rocket from Rookie of the Year.
Oh God! Gary Busey has trouble getting his cell phone to work a few times, more than one issue, right? So he had a problem with his car kit. I think, back in the day when everybody had the Nokia with the snap-on face, and we'd put the car kit and everything back then. And so I drive his Mercedes. The bay was at the old location, was separate from the retail store. So I drive it down, and ashtray's always full of cigar ashes. This blue, like, I want to say it's probably like a 5, whatever the big 5 series, but like probably like even 8 or 10 years old at that point, maybe 5 years old. I don't know. And get it all fixed up, bring it back down to the retail shop. And I walk in, and the manager's desk points looking out the front door. And I walk in, and I hadn't seen him before, right? And it's Gary Busey sitting at the manager's desk, right? And he's hollering to people walking by on the street. Hey, come in here, buy a radio, whatever, blah, blah. So some dude comes walking in, and somebody going door to door selling stuff, right? And he walks in, and he recognizes Gary Busey, but doesn't know who it is, right? He knows he recognizes
I feel like that's
right?
most people.
And he's like, you're that guy. And he's like, I am, like, who am I? Like, trying to get, like, dude doesn't know, right? So that's the first time I meet Gary Busey. After we moved to the other location on Robertson, which is where the Rick Rubin and the Stevie Nicks story happened, he comes in a few times, and the guys I work with proceed to tell him that I'm a big fan of the movie Big Wednesday, which I doubt you've ever seen.
Never seen it.
Yeah,
100% never seen it.
It was like probably a late 70s, early 80s movie about a group of guys that grew up together surfing every day, and kind of how life in the Vietnam War took them up. I guess it's late 70s. It's 70s or 80s movie. And the war happens, life happens, and they all meet up back on this day they call Big Wednesday, when this huge surf comes, and Gary Busey's one of the main characters in it. So they kind of prep him that I'm a big fan of the movie and of his and whatever. And I'm in the bay, and he literally just comes in and grabs me and starts acting out one of the scenes of the movie with me, like screaming at me. Yeah, in the bay, and like just doing lines. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely insane. And that's not the best Gary Busey story.
How's that not the best story?
So the best story is, he pulls up again. He says, hey, there's a case in the trunk. Grab it and meet me in the showroom.
What?
Right?
Wait, at this point, have you done work for Gary Busey, or
we've just fixed his cell phone? We've just retaught him how to use his cell phone a few times.
So he's the crazy client that just kind of like hangs around the shop.
I believe this was a specific trip for this. Okay. And he says, there's a case in the trunk. Bring it into the showroom. So I grab it, and it's a guitar case. And I bring it to him. He sits down. He starts opening the case. I call my dad, because my dad's a huge Gary Busey fan. And I'm like, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Just keep the phone silent and listen. I put it on speakerphone. And Gary Busey pulls out a guitar, and he says, when I did the Buddy Holly story, Buddy's mom gave me his guitar. This is it.
What?
And he sat
in the showroom. Buddy Holly's guitar?
One of Buddy Holly's guitars. And he sat in the showroom playing, like he learned every Buddy Holly song for the movie. And he just sat there playing them. And I got my dad on speakerphone.
That's insane.
Like, absolutely insane. Absolutely insane.
I'm going to say that trumps the Stevie Nicks story. I don't know how you've never told me that story before.
I got an Anthony Kiedis story too.
So-
that I like from up there.
So let's recap. Gary Busey, for no reason affiliated to installing anything in his car,
Just stop by to play a show for me one day
with Buddy,
because he knew I was a
hold on,
fan.
with Buddy Holly's guitar.
With Buddy Holly's guitar in the trunk. Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely like, and here's the hard part. At whatever I was at the time, 24 probably, managing expectations of life when that's my life at 24.
Right. But I would,
right? Like,
I'll say that's very on par for Gary Busey to just like stop in a random place, yelling at people to tell them to come into a shop and spend money, and then pull out a box with a guitar that's Buddy Holly's and then play music.
We damn near need an episode just from the Paris audio days. You want to know the craziest story from Paris?
It's not better than Gary Busey.
It might be.
Okay, well, you obviously have to tell it now.
So another Paris audio customer, William Shatner.
Ooh.
Okay. Same thing. Phone issue.
God, all these old people with their phone.
I'm telling you. His wife, before she passed away, sitting in the passenger seat, door open at the curb. I'm leaning into the car, and a bird shits on me in front of Shatner. Literally shits on my shoulder. And I'm like, I'll be right back.
That's almost poetic because you're in front of Shatner. You just got chat on.
Get chat on. Yeah. That was memorable.
Wasn't better than the Gary Busey story, though. And I'm sure everyone listening will agree.
Yeah, that's true.
Funny, but it's not on par.
Yeah. We had Anthony Kiedis. So we had a group of people that basically from Rick Rubin's kind of group and clan, obviously Red Hot Chili Peppers falls into that. So that we would get cars for. Rick called up one time and he's like, hey, you guys do a lot of stereos in those Porsches, right? And we're like, yeah, we do. Did you get a Porsche? And he's like, no. I got Chris's Porsche here and his birthday is coming up. And before he comes back over here, I want to send him your Porsche to do a stereo.
Chris who?
Chris Rock. Apparently keeps his Porsche at Rick's house when he's out here on the West Coast. Must be nice, right? I'm like, yeah. So that's a little present amongst friends. Just here, put a system in the dude's Porsche. Another favorite one was Anthony Kiedis. So Anthony Kiedis has this 69 Camaro convertible. And I guess it had a system in it. And they went on tour and he put the car in like a storage lot. And somebody ripped all the gear out of it. So the car comes to us on a flatbed. And it's like dirty, like sitting outside with the top down, full of leaves, just dirty, chalky black primer.
Ew.
And so he actually comes in. We're kind of going over what we're going to do. And he's like, yeah, sounds good. And I'm like, we got a body shop across the street if you want to like get it painted and stuff while it's here or the interior done. And he looks at it. He looks at me and he goes, it's kind of stealthy this way. I like it. I'm like, okay, no problem. As you wish. Stereo only. That's the really good ones. But yeah, I got to meet a lot of people up there and do some fun stuff and it was really my first kind of
I feel like this was your first introduction into trying to deliver on high expectations.
Yeah, it really was. And it was trial by fire and it was pretty high expectations and it was in nicer vehicles. And I mean, it was that time period that really kind of shaped.
I feel like this is where confidence gets built because if somebody has high expectations and you can deliver on that, then you're just like, all right, I'm doing something right.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely like, I got this, I can figure this out. And then, do we want to cap it there?
Let's keep going.
Keep going. So, okay. So at that same time, that's about the time my wife and I started dating and doing all that kind of stuff. And again, I got to kind of stitch all these memories back together.
Right, so are you with your wife now at this time? Oh yeah. You said Stevie Nicks, you brought her there.
Yeah. This is when we were still dating. Yeah.
So were you dating in the early days? Like when you were telling the stories from the early 90s or no?
No. We had a mutual friend that introduced us and Yeah, I want to say we started dating around that time, kind of 97, 98-ish,
Okay.
right in there. Yeah. And so I started trying to think how I got, I don't know. I must have gotten fed up at Paris or something, or sick of the drive. You know, it wears on you when you spend 3 hours
Gary
driving
Busey
home in
kept coming
LA.
in and you had to work
No,
somewhere
no,
else.
that's the awesome part. That's the awesome part. So I don't know how I met Chris, my old partner, Chris, and a guy named Kenny Williams, who Kenny he's kind of bounced around, but a few years ago he was basically like shop manager at West Coast Customs. These days, you know, somebody else that I crossed paths with that went on to do kind of stuff. He was at Sailing for a while, and he was a sound quality competitor. Had a like Steve Brown had an Acura Legend that he competed with, and he was doing some pretty advanced fiberglass work and putting kick panels in a lot of cars and around that time. And somehow Chris and Kenny and I started kind of hanging out over there and learning what Kenny had to know and was doing, and kind of split some time, I think, between there and Paris around that time, and got to do some fun cars. And that's when Kenny had gotten the call to build Dan Murphy from Murphco. Had an Impala that Kicker was going to use for CES. And so I had gone back and helped out at Gold Star a couple of times on a couple of big projects, kind of while I was still up in LA and doing that stuff. And actually got my first taste of a car that was going to CES that I built was with Kenwood and a guy named Sean Williams. It was Street Concepts that was having Gold Star do the work back then. It's really kind of a complicated web, but the first car that had gone to CES won one of the Car Sound Magazine awards, which was a big deal. It wasn't a best of show, but they gave away some smaller awards. And the first thing that I had done that had gone to CES was with Gold Star. So Kenny gets the job to build the Impala that's going to go in Kicker's booth for CES, and he needs help. And so I'm down there helping. And Chris and him handled the majority of the car. I did, some kick panels and some work in the dash, and I was pretty excited to be a part of that kind of team. And it was going to be the first like big main CES build for me. That was like something that was substantial, and it had to be a couple of weeks before CES. Kenny gets a phone call from the guys at Kicker, and they're like, "Did you guys already build the subwoofer box?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's all done. It's painted, it's all fiberglass, super cool looking. Don't worry, you'll love it." And they're like, "Yeah, it's not going to work with the new woofers." And we're like, interesting. And they're like, "Yeah, so you're probably going to need some help. So we're going to send 2 of our guys out, and they're going to help you get the car redone, in the next 2 weeks or whatever." So they sent John Myers and one of the other guys from Kicker out to help us get the car ready for CES, and they bring the woofers with them. And the reason the woofers weren't going to fit in the box is because that was the year they introduced the square woofer, and that's why it wasn't going to fit in the box. So it was really cool. John was the first kind of like factory trained, like had been in the education side, had worked, next to a lot of big time installers. And he was the kind of the first person that kind of exposed me to that kind of corporate-y mentality and that kind of stuff. And just super down to earth guy. He's done trainings all over the hell. We ran into him at a training in Canada. Like he travels the world training, and a good dude. But I picked up a lot of cool little fabrication things from him that was, outside the realm that I would usually do. And it taught me a couple little tricks that I still use and share with people today. And it was a really good experience moving forward. So we ended up taking that car to CES, and it won the Best of Show Ultra Stealth, which they basically gave away 2 Best of Show awards. One was super flashy, and one was like the integrated. And we won like the integrated one, even though we were trying to be flashy, which is kind of weird. Which was, I mean, it's cool. Yeah. I have that picture we can post too. But yeah, that was kind of a cool experience, and kind of the culmination of networking and working with some new people and seeing some new stuff. that kind of pushed all of that.
So at what year was this?
That's got to be right around 99, 2000, somewhere in there.
Okay, so after this is you're right out of Paris.
Yeah. So and I maintained a relationship with Paris and with Gold Star, and I would help. I at that time kind of was just floating around, helping as people had big projects and doing some of my own projects, and um yeah. And so I believe the path from there was that Chris and I tried to open our own shop, and we had a money backer, and we had no idea what we were doing. It was just terrible. And so that lasted for maybe a year. We probably had a year lease, and that's probably what we did, was a year. And that was about the time that my wife and I were ready to get married. And
Nice.
yeah, I had built a van for a company called Visonic. And it was one of those weird things where like somebody had gotten paid a bunch of money to build this van and they never finished. And it was this, you know, like we're talking about, it looked like a jacuzzi on the inside. As a bunch of painted glass, and the car, it wasn't drivable and all this kind of stuff. So somehow it had gotten to me to redo. And one of the guys I met, you want to talk about going back with some machining stuff. One of the guys I had met that worked at Gold Star, his name was Garrett Frank. I haven't talked to Garrett in a really long time, but his dad owned a company that built out like supermarkets and stuff. So they'd build like cash wraps and signage and deli counters and all that kind of stuff. And they had a CNC machine, right? So Garrett had told me like, hey, you're doing that big van project. Do you want me to cut you parts on the CNC?
And you're like, what?
And so this was, and we're like, okay. So I would go over to his dad's construction company and I would sit next to him because I had no idea how to draw on the computer. And he would, as long as it was, you know how it is drawing stuff. If it's rectangles and squares and inlays and circles, it's all easy. And he would draw it all up, and we go out back and the machine would cut it out. And I did that van that way. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. So then every time from then on, I would get a car, I would just go to Garrett and be like, draw me this, draw me that, do that, do that. And then eventually I ended up having him make me templates. We'll get to that a few years down the road, but yeah, that we just hang on the wall and use to do all sorts of stuff back before there were.
All I can think about is what is Garrett doing today? It sounds like he's the OG of car audio fabrication.
Yeah, and he wasn't like such a hardcore fabricator. He was like just an installer there. And my guess is that he runs his dad's company. I'm pretty sure it's still there. There's a really cool hardwood place right around the corner, but maybe we'll reach out to him. I'll put him on the top of the list. That I'll have to look up good old Garrett and see what he's up to. He had another friend that worked there, and he was cutting parts for him too. I don't know whatever happened to that guy. I'd say maybe Joe or something.
All right, so you're on your
brain. It's hard to go back that far.
You're on your own. You're floating around.
Yeah, I had built that van for Visonic, and when I had the shop, I actually competed DB Drag one year out here on the West Coast. We had a big team called Team XSSPL, and I decided that I had conquered the sound quality world after doing the Stevie Nicks card. No, I had kind of gotten that education, and I had always kind of been I'd always kind of paid attention to DB drag racing and decided that I liked the engineering side of it. And I had a ton of experience. At this point, I'd been using, box building software for 10 years. Every box I built, I ran through box building software. I knew that process. I knew from looking at what the computer was telling me, I could envision how that would sound in a car. And I really wanted to apply that knowledge and try to build something cool. So we built a car and trailed it around and went to finals. We were actually sponsored by Zapco as an SPL team, which was kind of crazy, and had 9.0s when the 9.0 came out. And yeah, we had some fun with that and did pretty darn well. And but just kind of like ran that year. Then the following year, I was getting ready to rebuild the car, thinking about rebuilding the car. And I had noticed that the company that owned Visonic was called the Inaba Group, and they had a bunch of brands. They were Mobile Authority and MA Audio, and they had bought Cliff Designs, like a bunch of brands, and they not the greatest gear in the world, but you know, they had this amp that they said did 4,000 watts. And since I had a contact there, I had built him that van or finished that van for him. I'm like, you know, let me go up and see them and see if I can borrow one of those amps to test. And I get up there and I meet a guy. They introduced me to their guy, that's their engineer. I'm giving Matt the air quotes right now, right? And I'm like, yeah, I want to check out, you know, the 4,000 watt amp and see how much power it really does. And he's like, oh, it does 4,000 watt. It does over 4,000 watts. And I'm like, oh, I absolutely don't believe you, right? And he brings me in and shows me his test setup, and he's got this bank of batteries and this bank of resistors, and I'm like, okay, how? Show me that this thing does 4,000 watts, and he does it, and he's measuring just the straight voltage and does the math, and he's like, see, there you go, and it, you know, that's 1 ohm worth of resistors, and so that's the math, and I'm like, yeah, but the only thing is that that's not. I know you say that's 1 ohm, but that's not 1 ohm. By the time you start playing 1,000 watts through it, the impedance has risen like crazy, and you're literally like a tenth of that power. And we can't really tell what it's really doing. This is way before amp dynos and stuff like that. And I'm like, you want to see that same thing? Let me grab one of my 9.0 Zapcos out of the car, and like by his math, it's doing like 12,000 watts on his resistor bank. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's doing 12,000 watts. So long story short, I ended up getting a job there. Yeah, so I ended up working alongside their quote unquote engineer, and did a lot of stuff, a lot of, you know, marketing and product development, and actually getting them to test product and supporting some competitors that we had, and did that for a few years. And that's that point. You want to keep going? It just keeps going and going. Yeah. So we're after that, finish you out. Yeah. Oh gosh, we still got a ways to go. We're not even to Alpine yet. So then, when I had the shop with my buddy Chris for a little bit, I had met a guy, his name's Sean Bennett, who had a detail shop, and I had done some work on his 4Runner and then a couple of his customer cars, and we kind of become friends. And when I bailed from the Inaba Group, we just kind of started building stuff out of Sean's detail shop, and it was really weird. It was in a parking structure, and it was literally the bottom floor of a parking structure, and we built a wood shop down there. And I started building cars out of this parking structure. It was totally random, but before we'd built the room, Sean had this 4Runner that was sponsored by Audiobahn, and we did a bunch of crazy fiberglass work. I mean, I literally set up like a Ryobi router with a wood top over a trash can to like make rings and build his 4Runner. But you know, it's a car that was on the cover of Car Audio and Electronics magazine, and that was kind of a big deal. And we took that car to SEMA, and at SEMA, I have no idea what year this would be. Probably maybe right around that time, 2000, 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. I'd have to look up. I can probably figure out the dates. But we took it to SEMA. At SEMA, the guys from Sony saw it, and it was Rick Kojan and Rob Liss from Sony saw it, and were talking to us about it, and liked what we had done. And they were putting together kind of it was kind of to hit that hot import night scene as you were there. So we're right around those years, and they wanted to put together this Team Explode, where they kind of grabbed one person from each kind of car culture, where they had like an import car, and they really wanted Sean to do something with a truck. And so we kind of negotiated with them, and we're talking to them after SEMA, and we're like, well, what is it that you want us to build you? And they're like, oh, no. We want you to build your own car. And we just need to know how much money you need. And we're like, wait a second, you're going to pay us to build our own car? And so Sean basically struck a deal, and kind of behind the scenes, we built the Sony truck, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, but it's a slammed Silverado that had 7 10-inch woofers behind the seat.
Yeah, I remember that.
And had like had an insane amount of TVs, and it had a, I think the coolest thing of that whole truck was we took like a 17-inch, which was huge for a computer monitor back then. We took like a 17-inch monitor and put it in the bed and built like a little fiberglass doghouse. And then the Sony guys that did the Aibo dog, it was like this robot dog they had back in the day, programmed the dog to like walk around the bed at the shows, and then it would go sit down and watch TV.
That's
inside its
cool.
doghouse.
So I feel like, for me coming up in that generation, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that from an engineering standpoint was like at its height. And then it just kind of died. So I feel like the engineering of stuff that you saw from 2003 to 2005, like when you go back to the OG Alpine cars, and like
you think that, or you think Fish's stuff that motorized into like a million
like there
pieces.
was just a ton of engineering and movement and motorization, and that's why, like, for me on that Escalade build that I just did not too long ago, I'm like, I feel like you got to bring some of that back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you can do something and you can make it move and make it come to life, that's where everything was at in that like 02 to 05. And that's what I saw coming up. Like, dude, that's fucking cool. I want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely pushed into that range. And so like that 4Runner that we had built, Sean had a couple of crazy ideas. Like we up front where the battery was, where you have the fuse, everybody was doing cool holders for the fuses and some sort of like decorative panel near the battery. And Sean was like, screw that. I want TVs in the engine.
TVs so everywhere from 02 to 05.
That was the thing. So with the 4Runner, we put it there. When we did the truck, Sony made some nice, small, compact, good picture monitors. And like, that was the whole goal of that standard cab truck, was to see how many monitors we could fit in it. So a standard cab truck, it had TVs in the headrest. The pillars behind you had a monitor on each side. The headliner had 3 TVs. Like if you looked back in from the back, obviously a big TV in the dash, the armrests of the truck motorized up, and guess what? TV. The pedestal for the seats, like the sides of the seats had TVs in them. Of course it had TVs in the engine compartment. Like the bed had like 3 TVs on each side. Plus
there was definitely a TV like 3-year run where you would see TVs and like turn signals.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely nuts. We did that. We did 20 something TVs in a standard cab truck. I remember the next year at CES, there were some guys down here by us. I want to say Luther Sound Design, LSD or something out here, and they had some Eclipse that Excel had sponsored, and it was like the pillars had like 6 2-inch TVs down each one. Like they took, like, we went stupid and they just went.
I remember this Mustang that I would always see at shows. And it had like TVs in every turn signal, just like the dumbest places. Like the door handle had a TV. Like you're questioning to yourself, why is there even a TV there? And in my Eclipse, the one that I was telling you about, the one that I had, where I had the Lambo door and the suicide door, the Lambo door, when it went up, because there was a TV in the door, when the door was up, the TV was in the normal aspect ratio, like as you can see it level. But when it was down, it was all crooked. You know what I mean? Like it was all, you could only view it as the door's up.
Right. Gotcha. Oh, that's funny. So we had built the truck for Sony, and I had been there was a company back then called APC that did all the clear headlights and taillights. That was like the huge fad with all the kind of import scene, and they were growing into like they went from a guy hawking parts. Brian was selling parts out of his truck, driving around, and turned it into a huge company. And they had this huge presence in the US and in Canada, and this huge show car fleet. So they were using a couple different guys to do audio in the cars, and that was Larry Ashley was running that kind of program. And Larry was sending me some cars out of that batch, and we were doing just over the same thing, over the top. It's all about grabbing attention. It's all about when you're in that sea of cars at a car show that you have something that draws people to the car. And so we were doing, I look back now and like I think a lot of it's hideous, but we were doing wild stuff and trying to push limits, and some of it was tasteful and some of it was not. And we were obviously keeping an eye on what Fish was doing and what the Alpine guys were doing, and definitely a lot of inspiration there. And it finally got to a point where APC got so big that they wanted to bring somebody in house, and I was just kind of like, you know, playing around, building some stuff with Sony and building some stuff on my own. And they offered me like a real job, and I had gotten married and I felt I kind of owed it to my wife to take a real job. And so I went to work at APC, and we got to build some really fun SEMA projects and kind of see that whole world. That's what really opened my eyes to the real business of SEMA and that kind of stuff. And got to build a lot of cool stuff and meet a lot of cool people. We did one of the first episodes of Overhauling. We did it at APC and got to meet Chip and do that whole build, and that was kind of fun. And did that for a couple of years, and then they got sold and weren't doing so well financially. And I was doing a car for CES for Sony, kind of on the side with Sean. He had sold the truck, I think, and bought a 350Z, and we did a kind of a crazy system in his 350Z. And it was right as we got laid off from APC. The car building crew got laid off in, I want to say, like late November or early December.
Pretty good time
like
to be laid off.
Like, yeah, it's like really nice right around the holidays and all that. But it was like, it wasn't a big deal to me because like I had all this work to get this car ready for CES and that kind of stuff, and spent some more time with the Sony guys. And it was always a great pleasure, and I have the utmost respect for Rick and Rob. And Rick Kojan's always just been an awesome dude and always been a supporter of mine. So I super appreciate that. And so we went to CES, and they actually hired me to help set up booths and do all that kind of stuff. Everybody's trying to help me out. And we're setting up in the 350Zs in the booth, and who comes walking in the booth but Mike Vu, who was working at Alpine. And that was the year they introduced the X5. And Mike says, "Hey, let's go outside." And this is when we both smoked, and he's like, "Let's go outside and have a cigarette." So I walk outside with Mike, and he turns to me. He's like, "You can't tell anybody, but I'm leaving Alpine." And I'm like, "Oh man, what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm going to open my own business, and I just, my time has come and gone." And
he said they need somebody to fill my role.
He basically said, "I don't want to leave them hanging. I would love it if you would take my job. I'm pretty sure they'd have you." And I was at that point when I had gotten laid off from APC. I was just like, I need to get back into like a regular manufacturer's job and not installing. And I'm married now, and I need to like, grow up and stop playing with cars and stop playing with car audio and blah, blah, blah. And then it's
but you can't turn that down.
There it is on a silver platter, like literally the most coveted job in car audio at the time. And you're getting it, your resume is going to the front of the line. And I'm like, holy crap. And so I don't think I'd met Steve Brown a couple of times before that, but Mike kind of made an effort to kind of make sure we had a little bit of a conversation. Mike hasn't told Steve that he's leaving yet or anything, but made sure that we had a line of communication at CS and that kind of stuff. And then in the following weeks after that all kind of unfolded, we kind of worked out a deal. And that's when I headed to another super pivotal part of my career, which was going to work in the show car department at Alpine.
So jumping right into it, your first day at Alpine.
I don't know that I remember my first day. I remember walking in. It was kind of weird because it was my first time like really interviewing. Besides Circuit City, it was my first time like interviewing in like a corporate scenario where like I had to have multiple meetings with these people, and they cared more about references. Like yeah, and it was not just about like, hey, can he show up and can he get the work done that we need done? It was like, are you a reliable person? Are you a good person? Like it was, you were really being tested. And I'd never kind of went through that. I'd always, most of my interviews were conducted at the back door, not the front door type of thing. Right. And so it was a very interesting experience, and obviously, uh, a little bit of salary negotiations and whatnot and all that, and I started. But I remember the first time I stepped foot in that building, and you see some of the cars sitting
Yeah,
there, and just like, it's nerve
for
wracking. Like,
sure.
it's like, oh my gosh, like, here I am. There's Steve Brown. There's okay.
Now at this point, what Alpine cars were already done
I mean, the
of note?
of note, working backwards is the easiest way for me to do it. Was the year before they had built the X5, which was the re-release.
Okay, super. It's probably one of I want to say the X5 was one of the most, I don't know, transcendent
Yeah, I mean,
for like my age, because I remember just the airbrushing of the different artists on the side. The seat comes out of the side, and it's like that. Was it a one
it was
seater?
2-seat, but tandem, so one behind the other. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They were both
Yep.
center seats that motorized like out of the side of the X5.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, like, every year there was kind of progression. Oh, let's work backwards. We'll get through them real quick. The X5,
Yeah.
and then the year before that was the Mini Cooper, and the year before that, I believe, was the Civic, and then the year before that was the RSX, and then I think
Hmm.
the year before the RSX would have been, I don't know if it's the Excursion. I don't know if it goes back. I might be missing one or two in there, but yeah,
So yeah, pretty intimidating.
yeah, I mean, these were cars that every year were coming out and kind of pushing the limits. I remember, I was at APC, and obviously Mike and I were friends, and Mike and Steve came by the booth at SEMA, and we were kind of talking, and they're like, yeah, I can't wait for you to see it. I can't wait for you to see it. And they were just kind of dropping some clues, and that was really the first car that they went to town on the outside. They welded up the doors, and the roof was off of it, and then the whole seat motorized out the back of the car to get in it, and it really
Hmm.
was the first time they had pushed that exterior side, and that's what Mike kind of brought some of that body work and exterior mentality to the game, which really stepped it up over. The RSX was the last of the 2-seat cars that was a dashboard build, and that's what
Hmm.
we forgot in there. We forgot Brownie's BMW. The one year,
Yeah.
there's a lot of cars there, but then you go into the bay, and there's posters of all the cars, and there's T-shirts from every car that's built, and you obviously
Hmm.
have this kind of standard to live up to, and um, I think that the X5 really kind of pushed it. It was the re-release of F1 Status, and really had a, kind of a mind on sound quality and showing off what those speakers could do, and the multi-channel processing, and going with the center drive, and still the wild outside and inside, and kind of mixing that. So we started kind of, when I got to Alpine, we started with a couple of basic cars. Jeff Fay, that used to work there, had a PT Cruiser. We like built a system in, and it was kind of like getting my feet wet, see how things worked, understanding kind of the layout of the bay and where everything was, and processes. You're also kind of crippled by the corporate environment of, there's a process
Right.
for everything, and there's an expense report, and there's an approval process, and um,
So first day at
oh,
Alpine, what happens? You
I don't
walk
even
in.
remember. Like, I don't remember day by day. Um,
You don't remember the first day walking
it's a
in?
blur. I mean, you got to remember, that's however many years ago. That's like 15 years ago. Yeah,
That's it.
that's it.
I
Maybe
feel
it's
like it should be
16.
longer.
Yeah, I think it'll be 16 coming up. Yeah, I mean, I remember feeling intimidated, and just kind of unsure of how everything was going to work. It was really the first, besides the Circuit City days, it was the first corporate job. The Circuit City job was more retail, and this was very much corporate. And there were meetings, and part of the marketing team, and we had to.
So let me ask you this. Leading up to this point, what is the biggest job you've done to date?
I think show car wise was some of the Sony stuff that we did out of the detail shop, and I had done the Sony truck, the standard cab truck we talked about with the Ivo dog and the 710-inch woofers.
Hmm.
We had done the 350Z for Sony, was pretty big. I mean, that was full fiberglass door panels, and the whole hatch area was fiberglass, and obviously all sorts of APC was kind of volume. We did a lot of show cars, and everyone had painted fiberglass in it.
Hmm.
So those were like kind of some of the big ones. Obviously, talked about the stuff that I did with Kenny Williams and the Audio Concepts guys for Kicker. So yeah, I mean, just a wide range of projects. And then kind of the crazy part was there was one more build I was working on as I got hired at Alpine. And I remember telling him, I'm like, well, I do have one project I have to finish that's for Sony. So here I was starting a job at Alpine, and I was still finishing a project with Sony, and that was the Porsche Cayman that they had. Is the one they dropped the motor out
Yeah,
and did the supercharger on
yeah,
the
yeah,
motor and
yeah.
all that. And so that was kind of interesting, like having to finish that on nights and weekends as I was starting with Sony. And then it was really interesting at SEMA that year because we go into SEMA, and it was as far as I remember, the only year Alpine demonstrated or had a booth at SEMA, and they were right across from Sony. And here was the HHR that we built for
Yeah.
Alpine, and then directly across from it in the Sony booth was the Cayman that I had finished.
So you had your Alpine polo on, and then underneath that you had a Sony shirt
Not
on.
quite, but yeah, those were some fun times. And yeah, I remember, as we got going, it was really exciting to be a part of that and get to throw ideas out. And I feel like I had to be the new guy, and Brownie's the one that had all the experience. And again, we'll have Brownie
Mhm.
on soon to kind of revisit these and take you through all those cars. But
That'll
yeah,
be
for
fun.
sure. So I get there, and obviously I know he's a huge talent, but we're also two different personalities. He's used to this. He's built
Mhm.
this same mentality over and over again. Obviously, highly skilled and such a high profile person. And I was,
Mhm.
relatively behind the scenes and unknown, and like maybe known
Mhm.
amongst the people that I worked with and stuff, but not like I hadn't gotten a lot of like kind of national notoriety or anything like that at that point. And so he definitely took a gamble. Brownie did, and picking me to work beside him. And we kind of get into that first year and the first big build, which was the BMW 6 Series, the Sinister 6. And
Mhm.
we I want to say we had some like corporate direction that basically said we want to do a BMW, and BMW is willing to work with us. And so there was kind of some behind the scenes things that worked out. And Brown,
Yeah. So when you get these cars, right? Are these cars pre-designed to a point, or is it just like a direction? Hey, we want to use this car. This is a broad idea, and then you guys run with it. How much is planned? How much is modeled? How much is
yeah,
improv?
somewhere I have some really bad sketches, I think. Maybe some pictures of some bad napkin sketches. But basically, here's how it went down. We were basically, I want to say, and I don't remember exactly how it was forced upon us, but I believe we were
Hmm.
told that we were going to use a BMW. And Brownie came up with the concept and just was like, okay, here's the idea. I want to do this rotating seat mechanism. And he's explaining it to me, and I'm just like, I'm the new guy, and I'm just like,
And this is your first time there, your first
yeah.
Alpine
And
build,
I'm
and he's talking about a rotating seat, and you're like,
and
"How's this going to
again,
happen?"
we're at this point just learning each other as people, and I'm looking
Right.
at him
Right.
like, this is a terrible idea. Like, I don't even understand what
Yeah.
you're thinking. And
Yeah. I hope you're not depending on me to make it
right.
rotate.
So that's what the car started with, was the idea of having this kind of turret style seat that was the Brownie was just,
Hmm.
this is what we're doing. Like, yeah, like no say, no anything in it. And I'm like, well, I hope I'm going to be able to get some ideas in, but I'm along for the ride, And so
Hmm.
that year was the year that PDX was getting launched. And so the idea was to show off the amplifiers, and also remember VHub Pro. Okay. So
Yep.
those were the two
Of
kind of,
course.
every
Yep.
car had a marketing message. There was something there was a story.
The good old V
Yeah.
Hub
It's such a
Pro.
great
Oh
idea.
man.
Like, think about that. That was 15, 16 years ago. And it was a great idea. It
Yeah.
would still be viable today if it worked better.
Yeah.
But it was a great idea. For those that don't know, it was basically a radio in a box with a little control pad, very much like BMW iDrive type controller, and you had a
Mhm.
video output that could go onto any screen, and then you had your RCA
Right.
outputs and all that kind of stuff on this black
Yeah, the
box.
cool thing about that is like if you had like a Nissan Armada with a factory nav screen and you could have a video input, you could essentially make an aftermarket radio out of that
Yeah.
factory screen.
Yeah.
I did quite a
Yeah.
few of
I mean,
them,
I
actually.
liked it. It was it's like anything now. The graphics just don't hold up. It's like
Yeah.
going back and looking at
Yeah.
Atari
I
all
know.
these years later, and it's like,
Yeah.
how did we ever play that? So
Yeah.
those were kind of the two things that we were our goal was to show off. And so then we started talking about, okay, how are we going to do a demonstration system in an open air car? They had done the Mini Cooper, which was open. We were coming off the X5, which was a closed up, pretty solid demo. Minus
Mhm.
all the reflections. That's a lot of reflective surfaces. And
Everything
yeah,
was painted back
yeah,
in the day.
yeah. Glass for days. And
Yep.
so we kind of came up with this idea. Well, what if we built the speakers into the pod and you listened near field, much like, kind of a studio up close, pointed right at you? And then the obvious one, and this was luckily, well, not luckily. I mean, this was the big part that I took on, was we were trying to figure out how to get bass into the car. And for the people that know me, I feel like I've always been pretty creative with subwoofer enclosures. I've been doing it for a long time, a lot of modeling, a lot of, kind of unconventional stuff. And the use case for that car was that it was going to be a demonstration vehicle. It was going to get used at CES, and then it was going to go on the Dub Show tour. So it was always going to be shown. It was more than likely going to be on a platform. And I turned to Brownie at some point and was like, what if the subwoofers were on the outside of the car and they loaded into the ground? And then we brought a port up in, and the port fired into the back of your head. And obviously we have some phase issues and there's some interesting stuff to figure out, but what do you think of the idea? And he was like, cool, let's go with it. And so so that's
Seems very, very Gary
yeah, I
Belton,
mean, it was over.
the
I mean,
whole idea.
again, for all the guys out there, like, how often have you gotten amazing bass in a convertible? And how have you, like, if you had a scenario where you're trying to show off an amplifier that makes some legitimately huge power, how are you going to get enough woofer in a convertible? Oh yeah, by the way, we took up the entire interior with a turret, right? Like, how are you going to get a woofer in this thing, and how are you going to get it to have big bass? And so that kind of became the one option that I thought was going to be good. So we talked about this car, and then we worked with BMW, and they found a car that was a lemon law buyback, and it was at a dealer up in Northern California. And we ended up, my wife and I flew up, went to the dealership and picked up the car and drove it back down to Southern California. It was a pretty fun experience, and a nice little road trip and getaway, and fun car to drive, very big and boaty feeling. And
So each car that Alpine's doing as a demo car, are they trying to find like ridiculous deals like lemon laws and things like
that
that?
was more, it was kind of on BMW side, I believe, that they were trying to find a way to kind of stretch our budget. And we really kind of liked that 6 Series. It kind of played into that whole idea and dimensionally kind of fit what we were looking to do.
Now, is that something that Alpine sought out for BMW, or do they go to different brands or different manufacturers and say, hey, we're doing this big car audio demo build? What do you think? What kind of deal can you provide? Things like that. How does that work?
Specifically, we were doing a lot of stuff with BMW on the OEM side at the time. And so that's kind of, there's a lot more at play at Alpine than Alpine is, as the outside world knows it, as aftermarket car audio. The OEM business there is a much larger scale setup, and
Right.
and much more important than the lowly aftermarket. And so just to kind of build that relationship and kind of work back and forth, that was kind of the directive, was to use a BMW if possible. And so I believe we had worked with their marketing team. Their marketing team had located, we told them we're willing to take a lease car, a return, or whatever it was. and they basically came back to us and we made a deal. We paid for the car, and the marketing team, I believe, paid for the BMW marketing team paid for part of the car, and it was obviously internally it was cheaper than normal because it was a lemon law buyback, and obviously we didn't care.
Okay.
So we get the car, we get it back, and working at APC, we tore down a lot of cars and in a hurry. We did an episode of overhaul in there. I mean, we tore a car apart in 45 minutes one time for overhauling, and here we are. We stripped that car in like a day. Like literally everything that unbolted off of it came off of it. And the plan was to order, I want to say it was a Hammond wide body kit from, like, we were trying to get our contacts at Alpine Europe to get it for us. And we are going to put some wheels on it and, figure out this top mechanism to kind of close and open the door and do the subwoofer enclosure and the turret and the dashboard with all the screens.
So as it's all stripped out, right? And then you and Brownie are standing there. The first thing that starts happening, like, bring me through that train of thought.
Okay, so
like, you're just standing there. The car's
somewhere there's a video,
and you're ready to get started.
Somewhere there's a video, and
what happens?
So somewhere there's a video online. I think on YouTube. Like, I put this video up, whatever it was, 15 years ago, 14 years ago on YouTube, of us tearing that car apart. I have some tape somewhere. I had a video camera back then, and
there's so many people right now searching on YouTube for that video.
It's so crazy. I think the account is Stereo Guy or something. I don't remember, but if I would have monetized that video way back in the day, I might have some money by now. But yeah, it starts with me like looking at, like, the sticker on the car, and at the time it was whatever it was, 80 or 100 grand, which, these days that'd probably be $150,000 or something. I don't know. And we just strip it down. And the first thing that we kind of did on it was to start unwiring the car. And, this is before we had all the alarm modules for remote start. And some of those cars were pretty high tech. I have a really cool picture of the gauge cluster, which I think we buried in the floor, down in front of the, like under the dash. And there's a picture on the cluster where it says like, car too low, do not drive, or something like that. And it's like all these warning things going off. So basically the goal was to get all the factory wiring out of the way and bundled up in the front of the car, and just remove things and make sure the car runs. Remove things, make sure the car runs. And just, you kind of go through that process, and making sure that the car is still going to run. Because at this point, we just don't know. That was the big concern. It's just that we would disconnect something or disconnect too much, and then the car wouldn't run anymore, and we wouldn't know what was going on. And at the time, that car was new enough that we didn't have any way to start the car, and like remotely, right? Like there was no way to interface. The car would not run without the key. Right. So one of the funniest things in that whole car is that I literally built a motorized assembly, and I took the whole lock assembly out of the column, and it's sitting underneath the floorboard in there with a motor that turns the key. So it's this actuator with built-in stop switches, the same way we would control the transmissions in those cars. And you could basically set it to a certain distance. And so that's what shifts the Sinister Six between off, ignition, start. And it's literally just mechanically a motor that drives the key in the ignition.
How long did that single project take you to figure out?
I think
like from start to finish to build.
Day and a half, 2 days. Yeah, nothing crazy.
That's cool.
It's pretty simplistic. And again, there's a lot of stuff.
Simplistic. Everyone listening is like, that seems like
today it would be no big deal. I'd probably just plug into the OBD2 port and just do it. Like, it's no big deal. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. And, when we're teaching classes and we're teaching best practices, I'm not saying that every inch of those cars underneath uses the best practices. There's those cars were built on extremely short timelines. And so the guys that have seen me at a mobile solutions class running 200 miles an hour, it's because I trained for this shit. Like we
Yeah.
hustle when we have to. Um, so yeah, so we're kind of going through this whole scenario, and I think Steve jumped right in, and again, when we have him on, I'm going to be interested to see how he remembers all this, and if we remember it the same or not. It could be we could have totally.
There's a few questions I'm saving for
perfect.
that.
So as I remember it, I'm just going to clarify everything with the way I remember it was. Brownie kind of dove in and started on the turret project, and the idea was that we wanted to stay out of each other's way. We hadn't.
At this point, when he jumped on the turret project, were you just like, God damn it, that's awesome? Because I want nothing to do with that.
No. It wasn't necessarily like that. I think that I had some concern in the beginning that I wanted to make sure that I had input, right? But I also have to respect the heritage and his experience. And again, when you know how it is when you're doing something that's to quote the great Tracy Weaver, not my vision, bro, right? When it's not your vision, sometimes it's a little harder to envision the final product. And so what we'd kind of agreed upon, we had an idea for the amp rack. The amp rack, the whole idea was looking into a rear engine supercar and seeing the motor under glass. And that was the idea, was that we would lay out the PDX amplifiers to kind of look like cylinder heads in the back under acrylic to kind of mimic that supercar look. And again, when it came to the styling of that car and every aspect, like we stared at tons of pictures of supercars, and there's some sections and some areas, like if we had a picture that we could post up, I could point to it and go, okay, here's like, the kind of scoop look to the door that was totally just staring at a Porsche Carrera GT going, I really like the way that line flows and it connects.
Yeah.
One thing into another and back and forth, and kind of like taking those little bits and letting them inspire you to kind of recreate and blend them together. So the idea was that we would Brownie'd start in the front with the seat, and I would start in the back with the woofer enclosure, and we kind of like work towards each other and try to stay out of each other's way and that kind of stuff. And
so you're both doing your vision.
Yeah. So point. I start on, cutting and welding all this metal out of the way in the trunk and cutting the trunk floor out to do this like just insane woofer box in the back to house these woofers. And I haven't thought about how we're going to integrate it with the bumper yet. Right. And I have the main structure of the box done in the car, and it's just kind of raw and hanging there. And now I have to figure out how to integrate it into the back of the car. And I'm pretty sure Brownie will remember this the same way I do, but he was leaving to go. I think he was going for a training or a show, and or maybe it was vacation. I don't know, but he was leaving town for, I think I want to say a week. And he's explained to me how, the Alpine way of doing it, and that he wants this way and that over here. And like, he's saying it, but I'm not envisioning it at all. Like, it's just, it doesn't, it's not quite adding up. And I'm looking at it and I'm just like, all right, I've never done it that way. Right. I know how I would do it, but it was kind of like I was being told to do it the Alpine way. And so he leaves and goes on vacation, and I spend like a week like doing this the way I think he's telling me to do it, but I've never seen anything done that way or whatever. And I'm looking at it, I'm just like, this is terrible. Like, this is not the way to do this at all. And Brownie comes back and he's like, well, let's look at it. And I look at it and I'm like, and I can see it in his face, and I'm thinking this. I'm like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I completely misunderstood what you were talking about, because this doesn't seem like how I would do it. Like, I would want to do it totally different. And I know this is going to sound crazy. This gets back to something we talked about in the first episode. I'm like, I kind of want to just throw it all away and start over if I can. And he looks at me and he goes, sure. Like, I agree. Yeah, let's do it your way, or whatever we came up with. And yeah. And I think it was from that point on that we kind of like I would look over his shoulder and he would look over my shoulder, because kind of like when I had got paired up with Mike Vu back in the day at Gold Star,
Mm-hmm.
we had completely different ways of doing things. And I had spent some good time at APC, where I had a guy that made tooling for vacuum form and all sorts of fiberglass molds, and a guy that used to lay up airplane wings, like really taught me how to use different resins and really kind of think differently about fiberglass than what normal car audio guys would have. I worked alongside real bodymen and painters and like all these different kind of people that I got to learn from. And so I had a pretty unique perspective on things at that time, and was pretty well rounded from a fabrication standpoint. So um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it was really interesting, and I gotta tell you, like, I had always kind of felt like I was the fastest installer that I know. Like, I would
Mm-hmm.
hustle through stuff, and I would skate the line between, I I think I would go fast and just try to get as much done on demo car type stuff as possible, because the faster we get it done, the more we could do and the more impressive it would be, and we always had a deadline. So
Mm-hmm.
I just remember looking at how fast Brownie was doing stuff, and I was floored. Like I thought I was fast. This guy is hauling ass. Like, holy crap, I can't believe how fast he gets things roughed in
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of stuff. So we get into it, and he's building stuff and I'm building stuff, and we're like waiting for that body kit to show up and waiting for that body kit to show up. And
So not to
yeah,
cut you off real quick, but how long into you being at Alpine was this project started?
um let me do some quick math. I want to say I probably started in like March, and it's probably 4 months into working there.
Okay, so 4 months in, you're doing
Yeah,
this project.
yeah.
Okay,
And
because there's always something to be said for when you start somewhere new. Obviously, you're going to work slower, and this is your first
first big
project,
project.
so
We had
you
some
are
smaller projects.
first big project, yeah. So you are going to be working slower to make sure you're doing everything correctly. And obviously, Steve's in his groove. He's done this year after year after year, so he is going to seem
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah, and I will tell you this, like in the scheme of I always joke about this, in the scheme of Alpine fabricators, and I will put on that list, I'll put Chris Yotto, I'll put Steve Brown,
Mm-hmm.
I'll put Mike Vu, I'll put myself, and I'll put Brent Davidson, who came on when Brownie got his promotion. Brent came on, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll kind of put us in a line, and the two opposite ends of the spectrum are Chris Yotto and Steve Brown. And
Mm-hmm.
Yotto is the most meticulous person
Mm-hmm.
I know, and not
Yeah, I think anyone that knows
yeah,
him would
and
say
and
that.
he's gonna take his time, make sure every inch of everything is done right. And Brownie is less concerned with the up close small detail. He's concerned with the overall impression of the car and the impact, and is the fastest out of all of us. I feel like Vu
Mm-hmm.
and I and Brent kind of all fall in the middle in between the two of them, right? But they're the polar
Mm-hmm.
opposites in that realm, which is why I think they really put out some interesting stuff. Like that's you had Brownie like getting the fast stuff done, and Chris making sure the details were really really nice. And so I get thrown into that, and I remember at one point, like I, uh, I'm air quoting right now, but a conversation between Brownie and I of like, yeah, you're thinking about it too much. You're spending too much time
Mm-hmm.
on that one little thing that nobody's going to notice. We have a lot of stuff to get done here. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I had to ease up a little bit, and we definitely had some help on those cars. I mean, to get all the body work and stuff done. But here we were into that project, and I want to say that we only had that car for we did it in somewhere around 3 months, 3.5 months, start to finish. I can go back and look, but
I mean, that's ridiculously impressive when you think about the work that's
I
done
think about how
on
little I
that
get
car.
done in a day now. And I'm,
Yeah.
yeah, again, you get to the point in those cars, there were times where we're working 24 hours straight through. We're working multiple,
Right, right. So
16-hour
yeah,
days. Yes.
your one day is like
Yeah.
2 days of
Yeah.
normal
And
time.
we're in a, at the time, one of the most state of the art, like we have every tool that we would want at our disposal and that kind of stuff. So,
Mhm.
um, at some point, we come to the realization that the body kit for the car is not coming. And we're like, I looked at Brownie, Brownie looks at me, and we're like, we know we're thinking the same thing. Well, we'll just have to build it. In addition
Mhm.
to resculpting the entire interior and chopping the windshield down and making the transmission move. I think we spaced the transmission down like 3.5 inches in that car to get clearance for the tunnel, like, electronic steering. Like we did a lot of stuff to that car in
Mhm.
addition to what you see on the outside, just to make it to where you could drive it from a turret that spins.
Mhm.
So we kind of, I want to say that we're kind of like in talking shit mode. Like it's like, well, we could just build it. We'll just build the whole body then. Like, they had done a little bit of work on the exterior with the doors and stuff and the hatch on the X5, and I had some body shop experience, and we're like, screw it, let's go for it. So the
Mhm.
next thing you know, we're framing out the body, and uh I'll just say that I assisted Brownie in framing out the front end of that car, but like we did it in a night. Like we framed out the front end of that car in a night. And by the time we were done, we just wrapped the whole thing in grill cloth and fiberglassed it up and went to town. Like it was, we just built it like it was a gigantic speaker box. And yeah, and it still holds up today. It's still around,
Yeah.
and it was pretty crazy. And I remember specifically looking at him and saying, "Hey, it's pretty baller that we built a whole body from scratch. It'd really be a middle finger to everybody." And again, behind the scenes, we're all secretly like, we got to be better than the Rockford guys, right? Like so that was
Right,
always the
right,
battle
right.
back then, was Rockford and Alpine, and we got to make sure that we're the king shit. And little did we know that I believe that was the year that Carlson was building his Civic, right? And
Mhm.
which was pretty crazy too. And I go, we should paint it black, because nothing says like, hey, we built a body from scratch
Yeah.
and then we painted
Yeah.
it black,
And it's
because
black.
that's the
Yeah.
easiest color in the world to hide body work under. Not. So yeah. So and he looked at me and he was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And we went with it. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. So it was a long project. I was wore out. Like it was as hard as I'd ever pushed myself on anything. And I'd had plenty of SEMA and CES deadlines up to that point, but uh, you just dig yourself a hole and you gotta find a way out.
Was there any point in that project that you just felt defeated? That you're just like, I don't know how we're gonna overcome this?
Um I want to say that like towards the end, like you're just, yeah, the the energy drinks don't help, like nothing, like you're looking for something to kind of like re-energize, and it just
But no part of the project was like a stalemate where you're just like, I don't know how we're gonna make this work.
Ah, you saying from a difficulty level of something or just time-wise?
Right, right. Like you run into
No,
an
time
obstacle, whether
time is
it's like I said, moving the transmission or the articulating seat.
no. No, I mean, the
It all came together pretty
well, I mean,
smoothly.
there's always issues, but, like, I don't think that I think that that's one thing that Brown and I both shared, was that we weren't gonna let anything stop us. Like, we have a
Mhm.
goal. We're gonna make something just absolutely insane, and nothing's gonna stop us. We're just gonna get it done. And, again, we had lots of hands helping, and
So so did you always have that mindset? Because I know that like when you and I specifically worked together at Mobile Solutions doing projects, me and you share the same mindset where we're just like, well, let's see if it works. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like we just try. We don't know what the outcome may be. We think we know, but we try it to see if it
Yeah, I mean,
works.
I feel like experience, some of that gets written off as experimentation, right? Like there's
Hmm.
and when you're on a deadline like that, there's only a certain amount of experimentation that you have time for. The good news on like the
Correct.
Alpine project is that in the off season, right? Because we were handcuffed to build those cars in a short period of time. We had all sorts of time to play around other ideas and brainstorm ideas, the other 9 months out of the year when you're not building a car. And so
Mm-hmm.
I remember we had a few things that we kind of, worked through and practiced on other stuff and researched and tried to figure out. And again, depending on what it was, we would we'd find a way. We'd find a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if we got into something and thought that, there was no way we were going to get it done on time, we just ditch it. But I don't remember having to throw, besides the woofer box trim into the back bumper away. I don't remember having to throw a whole lot away on that one.
So you guys finished that
Yeah.
project. How?
So I'm absolutely beat, right? Like I pushed like I'd never pushed. I'm beyond tired. We get the car to CES. We have a few issues with the car. I'll wait till Brownie's on and maybe he'll tell you some of those stories about the hallway trying to get it into CES and that kind of stuff. But we get the car all done and Brownie and I go back to the hotel. The car's placed. It's got to be there a few days before the show because they got to build the booth around it the way it was set up back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have a meal and a beer. And we sit down. It's the first time we get to kind of like relax and recap. And it goes from like, holy hell, that was the worst we've ever had it, to so what are we doing next? What are we building next? Like, how do we outdo that? Like, how do we make something better? And yeah,
That's
and like
good.
instantly, like it just like a light switch, like it was a relief.
And that's awesome for you too, because here you have a dude who's made a bunch of iconic cars and you just completed your first iconic car
Yeah.
with him. And now you're automatically focused on how to
Yeah.
be better. So that's serious growth very
Yeah.
quickly. That's accelerated growth.
For sure. And it's trial by fire, and you just get in there and get it done. And yeah, we succeeded. I think one of my favorite things that came out of that conversation that night, as we got the car in the booth and we sat down to relax, was I remember telling Brownie exactly what I told you a few minutes ago, which was, dude, you are the fastest motherfucker I have ever worked with. Like, you were absolutely flying. And he made a comment to me and he goes, well, I saw how fast you were going. I felt like I had to kick it up a notch. And I was like, okay, cool.
So were you exposed to Jerry's Nugget with Steve?
Yeah.
Or when
So
did that
it was,
come into the fold?
I want to say the first time I went there, I know Jeff Fay and Steve were there. I can't remember if there's anybody else there, but.
And I feel like we need to give a background of Jerry's Nugget at this point, because nobody knows what Jerry's Nugget is.
There's plenty of people that know what Jerry's Nugget is.
There's a few. So
for those that don't know, there's a small casino in Vegas that's out past downtown. It's not in the nice part of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the way they get people to come out there is for some amazing food deals. And I want to say the first time I went there, they have this prime rib, and they do a prime rib special: baked potatoes, salad, bread, dessert. I don't know, maybe dessert's not included, but like the whole deal. And it was like
a phenomenal dessert.
Yeah, it's separate from this though, because the special used to be $7.99 for the prime rib special, and it was absolutely delicious.
I don't even see how they could do that, because it's almost like,
well, that's for the smaller one. That's for the
okay.
smaller one, right? And I remember them telling me about it. I'm not a big prime rib guy, and I remember being so hungry that I cut the entire thing up into pieces, and then I just ate the whole thing in like 2 minutes. And they were like, "What the hell?" I'm like, "All right, next time I'm going to get that bigger one." And yeah, that was my first Jerry's Nugget experience. We go back at least once. Every time I bring someone there, they want to go back. I think the funniest thing is I'd probably been there, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, and we had graduated to get the medium size one is the one that I think you've had, Matt. And there's an even larger one that's been attempted on a few times, and it went terribly. And
yeah,
we'd had the medium cut, and we're kind of belly aching as we go to the door, and there's a security guard out front because it's that side of town. And he's like, "Oh, you guys had the prime rib, huh?" And like, "Oh, yeah." He's like, "Ah, yeah, that blackened prime rib's the best." And we're like, "Wait a second, blackened? Nobody told us they did a blackened prime rib. We'd just been getting the regular version. And so I want to say we went back the next night to try the blackened prime rib and have never looked back. Never.
Yeah. And I'll say, I've been to so many different steak specialty places. That blackened prime rib from Jerry's Nugget is phenomenal.
It is so good.
And it's the size of a full dinner plate.
I have a good picture that we could use somewhere when we do the promo stuff for this. I have a good picture of JT looking down at one, and it's massive. It is massive, and the environment, like you're literally just sitting in a coffee shop. It's nothing fancy, but it is delicious.
Yeah.
Now you.
I think that place has even been featured on Food Network,
probably,
if I'm not mistaken.
Probably.
Yeah, but
yeah. So Alpine introduced Jerry.
So was your first exposure to that with Steve or
Steve
no?
and Jeff Fay? Yeah, and then it became a tradition. I think it was kind of one of those, when you have that kind of big corporate group, you're always looking for places where you can feed a lot of people at once and have the bill not be outrageous and still have some fun. And that definitely fit that bill.
All right. So the project after Sinister.
Yeah. So the next big car after that was the RLS Mercedes, and this was kind of an interesting setup. So that was.
This is the maroon one, right?
Yeah. So
the imprint stuff.
So
okay.
That before we got into that car, Steve had gotten a promotion and was spending more time, we'll just say, up front and less time in the bay. And that allowed us to bring somebody else onto the team. And we kind of looked around at some options and had tried to hire some people and ran into some issues. It is corporate America, and you have to be a good, upstanding citizen to get hired there.
Maybe some people listening know who that is.
I'll leave it right there. And
someone listening right now is like, oh, that's me.
Maybe. And that's when I reached out to Brent, who I'd known since back when I worked at Inaba, and he was sponsored by Sonic and had a really custom car, and we'd kind of kept in touch through the years, and presented Brent with the opportunity, and he jumped on it, and he and his, I can't remember if she was his wife or girlfriend at the time, but moved on out. And so it was going to be Brent and I building this car, and Brownie would, spend as much time as he could helping. And it was kind of, for me, it was the first time I got to I got to step up a little bit and take a little more initiative on what we were doing. But we used to have this place that we'd go to. It was called Dark Place, and it was a Mexican restaurant up the street from Alpine. And it's one of those places where it's so dark inside that every time you walk outside, you're blinded, right? And so we called it Dark Place. The tradition would always be that we would go to the Dark Place every time we had a big project, and we would have a really long lunch and eat chips and salsa and, talk through ideas and kind of brainstorm there. And we'd done that with the Sinister Six. And we wanted to do a 2-seat car. We wanted to have speakers in good locations, but we wanted to show off the kind of tuning capabilities and be able to sit in the car and have a conversation with someone and explain, the processor that had tuned the car and how the processor worked, and kind of give them that whole experience. And instead of doing that center drive, it was, let's do, side-by-side seating, and we can tune for 2 seats. We can tune for 1 seat. We can, do all that kind of stuff. And when we, again, we were kind of persuaded to use a Mercedes that year. And the Mercedes that we used was actually Mercedes demo vehicle that had gone on the car show circuit. So that was the same car, like the RLS had a show car life long before we had it. It was, all the big North American auto shows, it was the RLS on display.
But clearly it was like a girl before she got the boob job.
Yeah. It definitely looked different before we put our hands on it. And the whole kind of concept was taking out the minivan side of it and focusing on the CLS had just come out, and we all just kind of loved the window line of the CLS. And we were like, what if you had this like big SUV version of a CLS? And that's where those body lines kind of the thought process behind those body lines, and you'd have to go back and see it.
So it's funny you say that because I remember the car looking a lot like a CLS and not an RLS. So with you saying that you tried using the CLS as inspiration, to me it looked like a CLS.
Yeah, I mean it was an R500, and we wanted to give it that CLS influence, and that's where we came up with RLS. Yeah. The imprint RLS, because of the marketing message that we had to give with the car. So yeah, so we went full steam, same type of process. How it ended up working out was that Brownie would go work up front in the morning, and then in the afternoons, he would come and work into the night with us on the car. And yeah, I mean, we kind of divided and conquered. I think Brownie's, he I know he basically did all the door mechanisms. I spent a lot of time on the front end and the hood. There's a really good story of you know when stuff goes wrong on this one. We'll get to in a minute, but yeah, but that one we framed that whole body out. I think there's some video somewhere. We had the whole car just built as like a wireframe, like it looks like a wireframe
Mhm.
CAD model, and just like the Sinister Six, we basically unwired the whole car. Again, stripped the car in like a day, unwired it. Basically, where the fresh air intake box was under the hood, I took all the wire looms and was able to bundle them all up and put them inside the fresh air box, basically in the engine compartment. And yeah, same thing, disconnected stuff, making sure it ran. We got it all, the body all framed out. But before we glassed anything on this one, we did metal. I felt like when we did the BMW, there was like a little hint of like cheesiness that we framed a lot of the body out of wood and fiberglassed over it. And it
Mhm.
was, if we had more time or more money or more budget, yeah, you'd do all that. You'd make a mold of it, and then you'd lay up a single fiberglass part and bond it back to the car. But it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, we built this entire car in 3 months. Like, it was just kind of what it had to be. And again, it's held up to this day.
So when you're taking things out of the car, you're just like removing the BCM and you're like, will it run?
No, no, no. I mean, we know the obvious stuff, but every time you're in a car and you see a module and you're like, I don't know what that is, and sometimes you'll like enter a
Yeah,
part
yeah, yeah,
number or
yeah.
something to figure out what it is. Like, we're trying to figure out what everything in the, like, literally everything in this car, and what can we get rid of. So every stupid transponder relay, or like, there's just all sorts of stuff that's just not needed. And again, does it start? Does it run? Does it drive
Mhm.
back and forth? And
That's cool. That's a cool
yeah,
little
so
nugget.
we got this one stripped out. We got all the body was done. I want to say we used like 3/16 steel rod to get the main body lines, and we just literally built it, welding these rods into place to make our form. And I remember ripping the thing up the back alley, because that thing has a 5 liter in it. I mean, it had a lot of horsepower. I don't remember how much horsepower, but it had some balls. And then by the time there were no doors, no hood, no hatch,
Mhm.
no seats,
It's a
nothing.
crotch rocket.
Oh my gosh, it was insanely fast. Like, it was like obnoxious, scary fast. And yeah, so I mean, nothing too crazy on that build. You spent a lot of time doing body work, and again, I thought the wood was kind of like the thing I was least proud of on the Sinister Six, was the way we had to go about doing what we did to meet the time and
Mhm.
all that. And so this one, we felt much better about doing the steel as the framework. And then same thing, we just basically glassed over the top of it. And Brownie had kind of built the seat mechanisms. That's the one that had, it was basically like what he had learned on the turret of the BMW. He
Mhm.
applied to the seat mechanism for the doors, and kind of did these dual suicide doors that pivot in with the seat
Mhm.
and the door attached to each other, which I thought was really cool. But it was basically built as, here was the outside of the body, here was the pivot piece, right? And then we basically bonded it together and then cut the door out so that
Mhm.
it would swivel, and that way the body work went right through. So that one, we had some help from my friend Robert, actually on both cars, doing the body work and blocking and getting them set up right. And I remember that we would be blocking on this body, like, it seems like for just weeks, right? Like, trying to get these big dish doors and these body lines crisp. And I felt like every night we would get it all done. And like, okay, we'll put another coat of primer on it, and we'd spray a coat of primer on it. And then we come back the next day and we start blocking on it, and it would be crooked again. And we're like, well, we just fixed all this yesterday. Like, and this went on for like a week. Like every night we're like trying to get these doors right and everything. And it turns out the one thing that we didn't take into account with doing it at a higher level this time was the steel and the shrink factor of the steel. So every night it would get cold and the steel would be in one position, and we'd block it all out and put primer on it. And then we'd come back in during the day and start blocking on it again, and it would be warm and the steel would be in a different place. And that ended up kind of being my least favorite part about that car, was that, you know, it kind of moved around a little bit. I mean, the car was just absolutely insane. It was menacing looking, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever it was, 28s on the back then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just, they were massive. We had a girl that worked with us, Jennifer Kwan, and she was, we'll just say she's not the tallest person in the world, but we have a picture somewhere of her standing next to the wheel, and it's like, she's not that much taller than the wheel and tire. Like, it's like, holy crap.
No, I mean, that's one of the cars that really stick out to me in my memory of Alpine. And I don't know if it's recency effect, but I mean, it did look really, really cool. The interior was really cool.
Yeah, that
It was just smooth and sleek and classy.
yeah, I mean, it was, we'd kind of gone a little different direction with the Sinister Six, and that we kind of went with that evil, dark, like Noah, who
Mm-hmm.
went on to become a Disney artist, was the one that was doing all the airbrushing on the Alpine cars, and
Mhm.
he had done the X5 the year before. And then we went to him with this idea that we wanted this like menacing, like, I think the words that we might have used were, we wanted to scare small children when they see it. Like, we want it to be evil. We want it to be sinister. And he came up with that crazy whatever it is on the hood, and
Mhm.
and all the detail work in there. And we had kind of flipped it on the BMW, and then we kind of wanted to flip it right back just to keep changing things up. And we wanted to go, for the first time on one of these wild Alpine builds, we wanted to go with just an elegant paint job and a little more refined. And that's when we, you know, got the crazy idea of doing this candy paint job on there. And yeah, just took it in a different direction. So the one story that really stands out is that out of everything on that car, the hood really took longer than it should have, and just way too much body work and back and forth to get it the way we wanted it. And at some point, we're going to set the car down. It had been on jack stands, and we're going to get a look at it down on the ground. And I'm bringing it down, and I'm under the impression that there's air in the air struts up front, right?
Uh-oh.
And it turns out there's not. And so as I let the car down, the front end of the car, the bodywork of the front of the hood, which is all basically molded as one
Mhm.
piece, it very
Starts
much,
lifting up.
yeah. Well, it seems like the hood of a Volkswagen Bug. Like, it goes
Mhm.
basically all the way from the windshield all the way down to the ground. And at some point, that hood piece bottoms out on the body of the jack, and the jack continues to let the car down. And it's Brent and Steve and I, and like, you can just hear the cracking of the fiberglass. Like, it just goes, and like, by the time you realize what's happening, you get the jack handle turned and you get a couple pumps on the jack back up. Like, you already know it's too late. And much like, and again, this is like, we're trying to get the car to paint. We're trying to get the car to paint. We were so excited. You're about ready to be so excited to see the car on the ground for the first time. And then you're
Mhm.
basically like, you have no idea how much damage was just done to this thing. And, you know, you just don't even, like, I don't think we said a word to each other. I just jacked the car back up and started unbolting the hood so I could pull it off and see where we were at. And it's just, it is what it is. At that point, you're like, you could sit there and cry about it, or you can get back to work and fix it. And that's exactly
Or
what
you
we
could
did.
call it a night and regroup the next day.
Yeah, no, absolutely not an option. Not an option. You got to get it fixed and get the team back on track. Yeah.
Mm.
So much crazy stuff. So yeah, I don't want to eat up like too much insane time talking like every one of these
Hmm.
stories. I'm sure
Yeah,
these
they'll
things
all
will,
resurface.
yeah, they'll resurface as we do in more of these podcasts. But basically, you know,
So
we went through.
how many cars did you build total at Alpine?
Okay,
Big show cars.
so big show cars, it was the Sinister Six, it was
Hmm.
that RLS, and then the
Hmm.
next year there's a whole crazy story where that's the year we ended up doing the boat, and that was we did the
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
boat and the GLS Mercedes, which was the tow vehicle for the boat, and
yeah.
um
We'll probably get into that with Steve.
yeah, yeah, we can totally get into that. And yeah, that was my last big project there. And when I had started there, I'd kind of been prepped by Mike Vu and Yato of kind of what that job entailed. And my goal was to get in there and do two cars and then move on to somewhere else. You know, I really wanted to go either onto the product development side or the OEM side. And I was kind of hoping that's where that job would progress. And, you know, as things changed and then we got into the boat project, and again, I'm not a boat guy. I didn't have the same passion for the boat as I did for the other cars, and so I think that just kind of accelerated my burnout of that whole
Hmm.
major demo car kind of building thing. And it just so happened that at the same time I got offered kind of an exciting job and something different that was closer to home and paid more money. And it was just kind of felt like the right time. You know, I had kind of thought before I took the job at Alpine, I was kind of thinking that it was time to go back to less, you know, not so much doing the fabrication and take it a little easy and maybe get a desk job again and that kind of thing. And then when the Alpine job presented itself as an option, you know, I wasn't going to turn it down. So I felt that I'd kind of run my course with that stuff, and I had learned a lot and gotten to do some really amazing stuff and meet all sorts of people and do all sorts of fun stuff. And then here I had this opportunity that ended up being in the point of purchase display world. And I got kind of lured away. And it was actually kind of odd. It wasn't for the car audio division, but I got hired by a display company that had a huge project with Pioneer, and they needed help on the fabrication, the design, and the engineering side, and the practical application of putting electronics onto a display. And one of the guys that worked there was one of my old contacts from Sony that had gone to work for Monster Cable for a while. And I got to, you know, work 15 minutes from home instead of driving to LA every day. And it was kind of time and worked out that way.
Hmm.
And that lasted for I don't know, probably I want to say probably 3 years or so, and that company kind of hit some rocky times, and the time kind of happened to leave, and I had some other work to do, and was doing some other stuff with Alpine, and basically went and rented some space at Mike Vu's shop, who was out on his own at that point in time, and started doing stuff out of there, and was doing point of purchase display, and was doing car audio and helping out other places and with some other shops, and cutting parts for guys. And I had my own CNC and was making stuff, and still doing mobile solutions classes that whole time, even through working at the display
Hmm.
company and kind of having fun.
What year is this?
So I left Alpine in, I want to say early, I think it probably would have been partway through '08, because I think I did some stuff with them for CES '09. And yeah. And then so by the time I went to the display company and then went back and started on my own, this was probably middle of the year, end of the year 2014, probably 6 years ago. And so I've been
Okay.
on my own for about 6 years, and again, still been doing trade show stuff and display stuff, and
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how all this kind of comes full circle because all of your experience, I always just know by when we go to CES, we walk through CES, and you're like, oh yeah, I built that, I built that display, and then we walk through like Pioneer, and you're like, oh, I did those door panels, and then you're just
oh yeah,
like no matter where you walk through, it's like you have some part of the skin in the game
yeah. I mean,
of some random part, whether it's a display, whether it's a car.
the boat, I think one year we did that little
Yeah,
boat for
yeah.
Stinger and Amp, the guys at
Yeah.
Amp,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
just random
Just
stuff.
so
And
many random little
I cut parts
projects.
for this guy who built that car, and just kind of
Yeah.
all over the
Yeah.
place. Yeah, it is a wild range of things that I've been doing, and um we'll talk a little bit when we have Brownie on about their whole thing where they've moved. They were sending me a lot of work, and it was really nice, and nice that I had that relationship and stayed close with those guys and got to do a lot of fun projects with them even after I had left, and especially since I had opened
Mhm.
my shop up. And when they moved back to Detroit, it kind of made me kind of relook at my business and realized that that stuff probably wasn't coming. And that's when I kind of made the decision to get back to my passion, which was car audio. And that's where I am
Mhm.
today, is doing back to doing high end car audio. And
So after you left the display company, is that when you started your own
yeah.
business?
Yeah. So that's when
Okay.
defined, and it's kind of weird. Like I knew it when I opened the business that I was trying to hunt for a name that didn't scream anything specific, right? Like most guys want to,
Mhm.
if they have a car audio shop, they want it to be like in the name or something. And I'm like, define
Mhm.
concepts. And I'm like, it kind of, at some point, my wife still thinks the name is absolutely terrible. And that was how I looked at what I did, right? Like it's what we do. It's not who we are. It's what we do. We help people define their ideas and their concepts. And we did that on the display side, and we did that on the audio side. And I wanted this kind of generic name for a business. I had no idea where I'd be
Mhm.
2 years later, let alone 5 or 6 years later. And so now we're kind of going through a little bit of a rebranding now.
The name's so much cooler once you explain like its origin. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like
Like I've always known the name, but as you explain where it originated from,
yeah.
it makes way more sense.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it made sense to me, and again, most of the people that were coming to me for work, they don't care if it was called, you know,
Yeah.
one of my friends, Josh, always tells me, he goes, "You should rename your shop and call it Gary O's Stereos." And I'm like, "I kinda like that, it might stick." I actually might make some shirts like that, I think it'd be fun.
That definitely rolls off the
Oh,
tongue.
yeah, so yeah.
No, but much like my brand Mosaic, people mispronounce it. They're like Musea, or I don't even know how they say it, but they just say it all these different ways, and I'm just like, oh, it's called, they call it Muzak, and I'm like, Muzak, like, no. So much like mine, Mosaic is a spin-off Mosaic, which obviously is a bunch of pictures to make a overall picture,
Yep,
right? So much like what I do or what we do is there's a lot of things that go into making the overall picture of music. And that is the overall layer of the artistic, just the engineering of sound quality, all of that to make music Mosaic.
right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of like an artsy fartsy type of bringing together all the different details of what we do, and it's also the same thing, like you said. If you Google something, you don't want to have 1,000 different hits
Right,
with whatever car toys.
right, right. Yeah. There's
So
probably, there's, 50, shops called Audio Concepts somewhere across the country, and,
yeah, yeah, yep.
yeah, so it's totally that for me. When we started, I used that tagline that was on all the, like, the poker chip business cards and all the business cards and T-shirts and everything. Always said design. It would always have the Design Concepts logo, and it would say design, engineer, fabricate. And that's how I always like to break all of our projects
Mhm,
down. You start with the design, then you engineer
mhm,
it, and then you go make it, you go fabricate it.
mhm.
And so what we've done recently is we're getting back into the car audio, is I've changed that, at least for some of the branding moving forward, where we're just going with mobile audio file systems. And that's just kind of where we're at. And who knows, uh give it another 3 or 4 years and maybe that'll change too. Who knows?
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
knows? But yeah, we're rolling with it and
yeah,
having fun.
yeah. I mean, those taglines are good. My taglines engineered for you because I mean, the biggest thing that tilts me is anytime that I get a YouTube message or an email and they're like, how much to duplicate this on this job? And I'm just like, well, one, you really have no earthly idea of, most people don't have an idea or a grasp on the equipment used, right? They might see like 10 Moscone zero amplifiers and be like, yeah, how much to duplicate
Right.
this? And then if you just spit out like 45 grand because the equipment cost 30 grand, they would think that you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? And for us, we start with expectations and a budget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the only way that you can even design something for somebody, because it's the same thing with if I wanted a pool in my yard, right? I don't have $1 million budget, so you don't need to build me a Pool Kings freaking pool outside. They're going to design something around my idea of a pool and my expectations of a pool.
Yeah. I
So
have a good question.
I don't even, I don't even respond as in like, I'm like, these are not mass produced. It's not like I have this system that I can just ship you and install for X amount.
Right.
We're going to start with what's important to you and what it is your expectations are. And then we can start developing a design around what it is you're after.
So when we first started talking about doing a podcast, one of the things that we touched on and kind of in that brainstorming session was talking about helping to like guide customers that are looking to meet their audio goals within a vehicle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how difficult that process can be, and try to give some insight from, how we design systems and what we think is important, and how all that goes. And one of the toughest situations I have is telling a customer that I need a budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's always an awkward conversation. I don't know how you approach that or bring that up with customers, but I feel like there are so many options and there's so many scenarios where every $100 bill would change how I would do a system. And
Of
I
course.
love
Yeah.
I love putting a system design together. Like I spend way more time. I guarantee you that between you and I, we're probably the two that put more thought into what we're going to put into a car and analyze the options and the choices.
Mm-hmm.
And without a budget, with like my brain, I could just work on system designs for months at a time. Like
Right.
how
Yeah, and I mean that's what I tell most people is when you start a system design, obviously I'm all about return on your investment, right? So if your budget is 12 grand, I'm going to maximize the 12 grand to give you the most return on your investment for that money.
right,
And if you're starting out with an entry level system, and again, this is all relative to the installer, but my entry level system is going to be a system that's done correct. You have a DSP, you have, obviously speakers, amplifier, subwoofer. If we can, running everything active. So we have the most manipulation over the soundstage. And when you get past that entry level system and you say you expand your budget $1,200, well, you can have a dramatically different set of speakers or a dramatically different amplifier. Therefore, you're getting a dramatically different product.
right,
It's the same amount of money to install a three-way set of Flax as it is a three-way set of Utopias.
right.
The same labor involved, but if you pony up the difference in the product, you get a completely different product. And if you're spending 5 grand or 6 grand or 8 grand, and you can find a way to stretch it to where you're comfortable, you can obviously there's a point of diminishing returns where you're not going to get the like just dramatic differences really quickly.
Right.
But at the same time, once you start going through those progressions, you can dramatically get the difference.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And really get a return on your investment. Because if you're spending 7 grand, I'm sure you can spend 9 grand. And if you do that, you're going to get a dramatically different product.
Right. And it's always better to do it in one shot and do it in the beginning. As much as
Of
I try to
course.
leave for those people that are on the fence, like a lot of systems that we do, we try to think when it's kind of when a customer's on the fence and they're like, I'd really like to go for the all out package, or I wish I was in a position to spend another 3 or 4 grand. I'm not. Here's where I'm at. And we kind of I ask that question of, do you want to leave that system optimized for every penny you've spent or are going to spend, or leave it optimized for further upgrades down the road? Because that will totally depend on like, hey, is it worth having a couple extra bucks towards a processor that has another 2 channels now right? Or are
Mhm.
we saying we're never going to touch this again, and 6 channels is enough, and we're just going to leave it that way? But if you want to upgrade later, you close your door, and now we're going to have a used processor we need to replace with another one, and that kind of stuff.
Yep,
So
yep,
some
yep.
really interesting decisions, and part of that to me, it's like I feel like system design is it's like a puzzle to me. Like in my brain, I'm trying to solve what is the greatest possible combination of
Of
ingredients to
product for
make
this
this
price,
right
yeah.
in this
Yep.
environment. Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
fun.
it's fun.
Yeah, and this the stuff that
So
we've been doing lately with the Tundra systems and the kind of pre-packaged, like this is what we do in that price point, has really driven that home, trying to squeeze every inch of everything that we can out of a system and make it
mhm.
repeatable and at a price that's insane. Which we're happy to say we've done some amazing stuff. I have some stuff to tell you about off the air.
All
Yep.
fair. So define
Yeah.
concepts. You start the
Yep.
business. How long did it take did you already have a name that you thought about over the period of your career to create a shop?
Oh
Because
no.
I feel like most installers always have that in their back pocket. Like Mosaic, it's something that was totally manufactured. The name was there. I mean, when I was in Virginia, my license plate said
Oh,
Mosaic.
nice. I didn't
Like
know
that's how,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
close I was actually. I was going to open a shop in Virginia, and one of my clients at the time was going to be a investor in the company, and I got all the way 99% of the way to where I just had to give the okay to actually do it, and I couldn't do it. And the my biggest hangup was understanding that if I'm owning a business, it's going to be just me. I have to do the sales. I have to do, I mean, stuff that I do now, but at the same time, if I wanted to grow it, then I'd have to step away from the fabrication,
Right.
which means I would need another me in order to do the fabrication of the stuff that I'm selling, right? The stuff that people are seeing on YouTube, that has to be created. And if I have to do payroll and all this other stuff, it's kind of difficult. And how's that going to work? And then I had to weigh my family time along with that,
Right.
right? So if you're opening a business, you might as well say goodbye to your family for a good 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
And at that time, I'd already worked for maybe 6 years at the time, working 6 days a week, driving an hour and 20 minutes to and from
Ugh.
work every single day, each way, right? So at that moment in time, the one thing that I didn't want to do was say goodbye to my family. I felt like that would be a death wish to my marriage.
Right.
I felt like it would just ruin everything. So I just decided not to do it. And fast forward another year and a half, I get an opportunity to basically run a business within a business. I don't have the overhead. I don't have to worry about payroll. I don't have to worry about the little things you would typically have to worry about. All I have to worry about is the jobs at hand and to finish the jobs at hand, but I can do it under the umbrella of Mosaic and how I want to operate
Right.
things.
Yeah, that's a good setup. I wish I had that some days. And when I say some
Yeah.
days, I mean most days. But
Yeah.
you're very fortunate to have a really good partner in that, and um, yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, it worked out well, and I still have a typical normal work schedule, and I feel like knowing you and Tom and Jeremy and Chris, and I mean, I could go down the list of people who own their own shop, and it seems more than not that it's a 6, 7 day a week
Yes.
grind all the time.
Yep.
And I just don't even know how I could function or even still be married
Right.
with kids and give my kids time. Cause my youngest one, I'd like literally didn't see her much because I would get home and it would be nighttime, right? I would leave before like she'd be awake, and I'd get home after she's in bed. So I could really only see her Sunday, and that was tough. And obviously my second daughter had a completely different relationship with. I completely like raised her. My wife, she's a nurse, and she had a pretty extreme schedule, and I felt like I just completely raised her. and it was completely different. So like now, family time is awesome. Weekends, I pretty much hang out with them. My wife generally works on the weekends, but it's good now.
Very good.
It's awesome.
Very good. Cool. I feel like that's got us up to date. Hopefully we're done talking about my
But I
journey
feel
for
like
a bit.
I feel like the climax of your journey, you were just like, yeah, to find concepts, and like that's where you're at
No,
now.
no,
And
no, no. It's been a long
there's
day. No.
not.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm
Why the poker chip? Why the gambling background? Is that just primarily because of CES and SEMA, the time in Vegas,
so
and where does that come into
okay.
play?
So I remember a story. So what Matt's talking about is when I went into business, my first year. I think it was CES. I think SEMA had passed.
Yeah, in a background, Gary has a poker chip, which is kind of like his card,
Yeah. So
if
I
you
have
will.
a poker chip that has my name and my logo and my email address on it. And I remember my dad telling me a story. I want to say it was from the Stardust back in the day, and it was basically like the one of the managers or somebody that it might have been my grandfather knew or something. He had his business card is a poker chip, and it was like a $10 poker chip with his stuff on it, and he would hand them out. And the funny part was that you could literally go to the table and play it, like, and they knew that you'd gotten it from the casino host or whoever this guy was, but it was his business card and it was a poker chip, and that kind of always stuck in the back of my mind. And when I was going to CES and I wanted to do something that was, I'm always wanting to do something that's unique and something
Mm-hmm.
different. And
Yeah.
here we are in Vegas for a lot of trade shows. And I'm trying to make the biggest impression I can with everyone that I come across and letting them know, like, hey, I'm out on my own. I'm doing my own thing. If you need anything, here I am. And you're holding your hand out looking for work, basically, right? And
Mm-hmm.
while you're seeing a bunch of people that you've known for years or met along this journey and that kind of stuff. And so I wanted a lasting impression. And so what I did is I went and I ordered whatever it was, 500 poker chips from Amazon. And then I had a friend that had a printing company, and we printed up little stickers and stuck the stickers on each side. And as I would run into acquaintances or get introduced to people, I would put a poker chip in my hand and I would stick my hand out and shake their hand and transfer the poker chip in the handshake.
Mm-hmm.
And it
It's a good
always,
bit.
yeah, I mean, it's old school Vegas cool, right? Like it's old fashioned, right? Like it's
Yeah.
kind of old schooly way of doing it. And is what would happen is they would every single time they would be like, what did this person just put in my hand? Right? Like expect who
Mm-hmm.
knows what it is. And then they would look down and they would flip it over and they'd read the other side. So they've seen my name, they've seen defined concepts, they've seen that it's a poker chip. They would just automatically smile and then they would look at my face. And I've
Mm-hmm.
totally, when you talk about making impressions, whether it's online or whatever, in person, I made that person in the middle of this trade show stop what they were doing, look
Mm-hmm.
at my logo, look at my name, look at my face, and they remember me. And I, to this day, get people that are like, you're the poker chip guy, you're the poker chip guy, or coolest business card ever, or whatever it is. And I never really kept track of how much business that brought me, but it was kind of something fun. I actually just found about a dozen of them in my desk and
That's cool. But I
pulled them
feel like
out.
you're going to have to step it up in 2021 because obviously nothing's going to happen in 2020. But in 2021, I feel like you're going to have to incorporate magic with the poker chip
I
because just
have.
handing it in 2021 is kind of lame.
So
So 2021, you're
so
definitely going to have to learn some sleight of hand, some magic.
this is not going to play on the podcast, but Matt can see me, and like out of nowhere, what did I just pull out?
Well, I don't know, but we all just heard a drawer open.
Okay.
I can see a
Yeah,
wand.
I have a magic
I
wand
don't know
right
what-
here.
I don't-
Like on
And
cue,
you
I have a
hold
magic
on.
wand.
You're holding one, but you also pulled out 3.
3.
I don't know why you have 3.
So there's a story behind this. Would you like to hear it?
Sure, they're back in the drawer as you just heard it
Yeah,
open.
sorry, I'm ruining the podcast with
One's still
drawers
out.
opening. I have one out. So I bought these as a joke because I am a practical joker and I can also be a little bit of a jerk sometimes. When I worked at the display company, we had an outside engineering firm, and some inside engineers, and occasionally they would do things where I would basically went to the display company, and it was my job to make sure that the engineers and the designers played well together, because engineers want to build square boxes because they're efficient uses of space and they're easy to build, and designers want these like insanely organic shapes and all that kind of stuff. And so
Mhm.
when you're talking about building, 1,200 displays for a Best Buy, like every penny counts. Like you have to be able to build something efficiently. And is what would happen is we would have even some outside engineering firms that would design things. And it's like, okay, if you make that joint, you're going to have to glue it together and you're going to have to pin nail it, which means we have to put laminate over it. And that's a hand done process that's going to take hours and hours on each display. And it just doesn't fly when you're building thousands of something. And as a joke, I bought whatever a pack of magic wands was, and I drilled the bottom out, and I would use it as a pen in meetings, and people would just look at me like really funny. And then we would review drawings, and I would just pull the magic wand out and I would wave it over, and I'd be like, so how is this held together right here? How does that joint work? Could you explain that to me? Do you need this? And I would hand him the magic wand.
Man of many
I'm
bits.
telling you, always a bit.
I love
always
it.
a bit. Got to be having fun when you're doing it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I feel like we should wrap that up if you keep that all together as one episode. Oh boy, Matt, that is a long one.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, I feel like if you know Gary and you're starting the Gary Bell Career Podcast, you know you're buckling in for a little bit.
I wonder how many people actually made it this far through all of that. Sat through it's not quite my life story. But
no,
it's my life story since I heard a subwoofer in a car to today. We got there.
Yeah. A lot of fun bits. Stevie Nicks, Buddy Holly, Gary Busey. I still can't get over the Gary Busey story.
Yeah, that's so good.
I feel like I should have known that story before the podcast.
Yeah. A lot of times it takes something to jog my memory to remember all this stuff, but
yeah,
it has definitely been an adventure, a crazy adventure. So luckily we're still doing it.
What's the single most important thing you learned at Alpine?
Are you saying that from strictly a fabrication or build?
No, I'm saying it could be a life lesson. It could be anything. That like the number one thing that you were meant to work at Alpine for you to be where you're at today.
Wow. It's always better to spend somebody else's money. Does that count? I
feel like that's a cheap answer.
It's a cheap answer. I learned so much. I grew so much while I was there. I mean, I had a hell of a path leading up to it.
I honestly feel like it would be that nothing's off the table. That like whatever crazy idea that you can have, you could execute it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I had that kind of philosophy previous. Like we talked about some of those Sony cars and the Chevy standard cab truck that we shoved whatever it was 28 televisions in because it was the cool thing, and that's what we thought was pushing the edge at the time. And yeah, I think that the Alpine was definitely a confidence builder in that we really got to just do whatever we thought was going to make something cool or different or better. I would say that at Alpine, the most important thing that happened was actually pushed upon me by Jeremy Carlson. How odd is that?
Okay.
And that was the push to buy a CNC machine. And I was able to at Alpine.
And what year was this?
It was in between the RLS and the boat. The boat was the first big project we used it on. So that was 06, 07-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in conversation with Jeremy, he was really, I would say, let's just go back a little bit. So RLS was the first year in car that I really had Brian's templates. That was as Brian was getting Mobile Solutions going. And actually the grill on the RLS is all his ARC templates make up the grill on the RLS and some of the hood bows and that kind of stuff. But in talking to Jeremy, he really pushed me to get a CNC, and I had I had no drawing program experience, no CAD experience, none of that. And he gave me the confidence to like push for it. And, it took a little bit of doing and some creative, begging for budget to buy it, but we bought a shop bot and it showed up, and I wasn't gonna not learn how to use it. And so that's what kind of pushed me into doing CAD work. And that became super important when I went to the display company and I'm reviewing drawings. And so I think that was probably the biggest growth for me there was learning CAD. And again, I feel like it's pretty standard these days. There's a lot of audio shops,
Yeah,
a lot of guys.
it's funny you say that. Just today, I'm going back in time to this morning when we have fairly two new people. I don't even know what their backgrounds are because I generally stay doing what I do. So I really don't see a lot of the sound effect stuff on a day-to-day basis. But, we're growing so much that we're constantly hiring new people. But I know that there was these two newer employees that were doing speaker adapters in like this newer GM, and it was Alpine Type S speaker in the front. And I'm just watching them. They're asking, "Hey, is there a template for this?" And they grab one off the wall because one's already pre-made, but obviously the hole is bigger than the Alpine Type S, so they're not easily going to transfer it over without grabbing an oversized bit to reduce it and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just like, all right, come over here to the computer real quick. And I load up the document of the GM adapter that I've built, and I show them how to load it in the software. And then I click on the circle, and I'm like, all right, we measure the new circle with the Type S and we reduce it, and then we print everything out, and you could just see their faces. They're just like, holy shit, this is so much quicker
Right.
and easier. And then I show them how to like tap the holes for like an 8/32 bolt, and just all the process of how to do this to make this like really cool adapter. And then just telling them, okay, as you're getting into this job next time, go to the computer, you dial up your 2 adapters or 4 adapters, however you need, and then you go back to doing whatever, running your wires. And then you come back here 25 minutes later, you grab your adapters, you use the Forstner bit, you use the chamfer bit, all this kind of stuff to make the adapter perfect. And then you bring it back to the car and you're good to go.
Right.
And it's going to be way better than any Metro adapter, any plastic adapter, any PVC adapter. You're grabbing this, it's perfectly made for your speaker to fit in this car. And it's little moments like that we take for granted because we do on a daily basis. You know what I mean? Like we take that such for granted, that whole process. And those two people seeing that happen and knowing that maybe they can reproduce that next time, they're just like, holy shit.
Right. It's
and it's funny because even the stuff that I post on Instagram, I feel like I can post a completed picture of a trunk that looks badass with a lot of shit going on. But at the end of the day, the most simplest things that people can associate with, like a speaker adapter, seems to get like the most feedback and engagement.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Well, I think that's key. And then having somebody that is going to instill that confidence and show that and pass that along. And I feel like the best fabricators today are still the ones that learned it by hand and then have added the automation in to help speed that up.
Yeah,
and
because you got to understand how to engineer and the problems to foresee stuff, because people who just engineer right away, they don't have the knowledge and experience to foresee problems.
I get accused sometimes of being a very negative person, and it's because I'm always looking for what's going to go wrong with something.
Right.
And that's how I confirm that I'm doing it the right way, was finding what's wrong with every other way of doing it. And that's knowledge. I believe my dad taught that to me. He says, experience is knowledge acquired from fucking stuff up. And I have lots of experience.
My favorite quote is, the masters failed at everything the beginners never tried.
Yeah, it's definitely, if we're going to impart some wisdom to the listeners, but at least to the guys that are out there fabricating and learning and doing that stuff, is 100% do not be afraid to fail. Like if you're
Mhm.
afraid to even take a chance or to do it, like again, there's build upon your knowledge. Don't you don't start off trying to hit off of Nolan Ryan as a pitcher. You start off on a
Yeah.
tee. Start with easy tasks that you can accomplish. But don't be afraid to fail and just keep working at it and don't give up.
Yeah. So it's funny, like when I kind of like what I alluded to 30 minutes ago, I feel like you and I vibe so well because I feel like when we build something custom, we kind of do it the same way where it's not like this full drawn out picture, but we have an idea in our head of how to execute it. And then you foresee all the different problems that can go wrong. And that's how you navigate through the build to the end. But at the same point, like when you and I work together at Mobile Solutions, we are not afraid to just try some off the wall thing in efforts that we might fail or not get something done on time.
Yeah. I think that the having the confidence in yourself over time. I mean, it takes time to build that confidence, but you know that if this doesn't work, you'll find something that does, and you'll learn why not to do it the way you thought you could do it
Right.
the first time, and you'll actually gain some experience there.
And it's funny too, because like looking at the other aspect, every time that I work with Tom, Tom has a completely drawn out sketch of exactly what it's going to look
Right.
like. And me and him, I feel like work so efficiently together that we just mow through the project. And then the last day, we are pretty much finished in the morning. And then we just kind of jive together and we're like, well, we can make this better. We can make this more detailed.
Yeah.
And we just spend the whole last day just figuring out what better finish work we can do to the part.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're not experimenting, we're not trying something outrageous
That's
like we are. We're always up to the last minute because we're literally pushing the envelope.
Yeah. Tom's so refined in his drawing, and it's so cool to have his ability to envision something and then put it in a picture that everyone understands what the goal is. And it's always easier to build to a loose rendering, right? Like I have some customers that on our kind of prototyping side that we do stuff for, where we're building to spec. I mean, we have parts that have to interface with other parts that are being machined or built, and possibly interfacing with existing parts in a car, and it has to be like exact tolerance, where usually most of what we're doing in a car, we get to be slightly creative to fit, and that's kind of nice.
Well, the reason a lot of Tom's designs work well in the things that he does is because they're often modular designed.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not really incorporated to fit flush with all the side panels. It's more of a modular piece that's bolting on in front or top of a certain part. So you don't have to worry about the constraints and the variances as much, which would then throw off your rendering, if you will.
Yep, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, I feel like we stretched this into like a 10-hour podcast. That's my way of saying I think we should draw a line. I know we never.
All right, that's fine.
I know we never want to stop doing this.
I could talk for another hour.
I know.
But
we'll save it for the next one.
All right, that's it. It's done.
That's it.
It's over.
We just call it done. We've hit the wall. Okay. We never know when to say stop, so we're saying stop.
On to the next one.
All right. Thank you guys for putting up with that.
And hopefully we get a whiskey bourbon sponsor.
Yeah, one of these days we will. I feel like
because my cup is looking pretty low.
I feel like we haven't had to apologize to anybody.
A pretty expensive habit.
Oh yeah, that is true.
Pretty expensive habit.
So we're done. I don't think we have anybody we have to apologize.
No apologies today. Nope.
Except for that one box that we threw in the trash at Alpine, the ass end of the Sinister Six. We apologize to for throwing you away.
We'll never know what it truly would have looked like.
I hope there's not even a picture somewhere. It looked bad enough that we threw it away. All right, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
We'll see you guys next time.
Cheers to my empty glass.
Cheers.